Hello, and welcome back to Zenin Fanfics. Today we're starting an exciting new series. What if Deku was Class 1A Senior? If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe for more content. The story we're featuring is written by Jace, is dead on archive of our own.org. You can find all the relevant links in the description, so be sure to check out the author's profile and say hello. Now let's dive into the story. When Izuku was 4, his life was pretty okay. He didn't have a dad as far as he knew, but he didn't think that was terrible. After all, he only needed his mother. But all good things come to an end. I'm sorry, Miss Midoriya, but your son is quirkless. That's when it all came crashing down. Are you sure, doctor? I mean, there isn't anything. Inko asked, as she used her own quirk to pull the figurine towards herself. I'm afraid so. With how weak your quirk and your husband's quirk is, it makes sense, even though only 20% of people are quirkless. Inko nodded her head and said her goodbyes, leaving the doctor's office with her son in tow. Mommy. Inko looked to her son quickly in the car to let him know she was listening. Do you think I can still be a hero? Her eyes widened, and she pulled the car into a lot and set it in park. Honey, she thought about it for a moment before answering. I think you can still be a hero. She saw her son perk up before speaking again, but not like All Might. He almost started crying, but she picked him up from his seat and hugged him. You're going to be better. After their talk, Inko decided that if she was going to support her son, then he needed to take lessons on how to fight and defend himself, especially from bullies now that everyone seemed to know. Izuku, do you want to start taking classes? Inko asked as she made dinner while he set the table. Like what? Oh, will it help me be a hero? He asked excitedly. It would. He nodded his head vigorously, and she smiled. She wanted to start off with something that would be good for running away and hiding from people first. So at the age of 4, he started gymnastics and parkour. She was proud that her son didn't seem to mind that he wasn't getting into fighting right away, though. It was all going fine until he came home one day with a long, nasty cut on his arm. She had asked him who did it, but he didn't tell her and only looked down sadly at himself. Honey, did this happen while you were trying to practice? She saw her son straighten up and begin to talk quickly. No, it was this other kid. I had been trying to run away, like you said, and was halfway up a tree when they grabbed onto my arm with their quirk, and it cut me. But the teacher said it was an accident, so I didn't want to get the other in trouble. He explained, whispering at the end. She smiled sadly at her son. He was being a hero, even to people who didn't deserve it. It's okay, honey. I'm going to show you how to fix this up okay. After all, a hero needs to know first aid. She declared, carrying him to the bathroom. She was glad that she was a nurse, so it was a simple few stitches and cleanup. At the age of 6, Inko decided it was time for him to begin other activities. The bullying hadn't stopped, and her son was already getting in trouble all of the time since they blamed him for it. So she decided it was time he learned to fight back. I think you should start some other classes. What do you think? Inko asked as she helped bandage another wound. Really? Can I choose? How many am I allowed to do? Inko smiled as he talked excitedly about all the things he could learn. At the age of 6, he was in gymnastics, aikido, hapkido, judo, jiu-jitsu, and a parkour class. She thought it was too much for him since he was so young, but he was so excited and had handled everything well enough that she decided that it was okay for him to take so many classes. Since he started not being at home so much, Inko also decided to start taking more shifts. Money wasn't the issue, of course. They had enough to be fine for a while. She loved Izuku a lot, but nursing was always her passion. Izuku, honey, I'm not going to be home so much anymore, and I'll be getting back a lot later. Is that okay? She asked as she walked him to his school. It's okay, Mommy. My teachers offer me rides all the time. Inko was glad that he had such amazing teachers. She had known Haku and Sakura for 2 years now, and was glad that they also offered the fighting classes to teach him. The only new teacher he seemed to get was a man named Akabane, who was a very calm old man who had a fighting quirk that allowed him to see all the openings in a fight. Okay, honey, as long as you're sure. It was Saturday, or, as Izuku called it, free day. He had classes every day of the week except Saturday. His teachers thought it was because he wanted to play on those days, but it was actually because it gave him time to try out his own fighting style that he was making with all of the classes he took. He quickly learned that every fighter has a beat, like music, that they all followed, and if you were able to mess up the beat or keep yours unpredictable, then it would make the fight easier. He also used these days to learn anything else that could help him. He had been learning how technology and devices worked to learn hacking, support building, and how to destroy any weapon he came across or find its weakness. He had also picked up sewing. He didn't know why, but he found it fun and comforting. After all, sewing was just like stitches, so he used it as an excuse, even though he knew his mother didn't mind it. He was of course still interested in heroes, but he didn't have any All Might stuff yet. He didn't see the point in liking him if he couldn't actually help the kid. He also realized that, being quirkless, All Might didn't support quirkless people and often seemed to look down on them. So Izuku ended up liking a different hero. He was kind of new and had only graduated recently, but was an amazing underground hero, as well as fought quirkless countless times. No one knows what his quirk is, but from the videos I've seen, it has something to do with his eyes. He spoke aloud while taking apart an old computer from the junkyard, and all of the attackers seem to lose control of their quirks unless it's a mutant type. He finally got the back part open and began messing with the motherboard. So maybe he can wait, that's it. He yelled, running over and grabbing one of his notebooks before writing quickly. He can erase people's quirks as long as he can see them. That's why his hair floats. He's using his quirk. He wrote down any other things he could think of about the hero, including how his capture weapon assisted with keeping villains in his line of sight. Inko got home around midnight, but she was surprised to see her son still awake and working on a computer while writing in his notebook. She expected to see or hear him mumbling, but he was silent and had his lips pressed together as if forcing himself not to talk. It wasn't the first time she had noticed it either. When she had the first time, she thought maybe he was just having an off day, but this proved he wasn't. Izuku, I'm surprised you aren't mumbling. She laughed a little nervously. She was worried that her son was still being bullied. Oh, sorry, I just must have been really focused. She could tell he was lying. He had a habit of putting his hand on his neck when he lied to her. She couldn't figure out why he always did that, though. She only nodded her head, but didn't seem convinced. Izuku, honey, are you being bullied again? Izuku jumped so much that he accidentally cut himself on the piece of the computer, but he quickly wrapped it and looked at her. Nervously, why would you say that, Mom? Everyone pretty much leaves me alone, but it's fine, really. He was always a very convincing 7-year-old, even though he had a few tells. Okay, Izuku, whatever you say. Izuku was now 12 and always seemed to have a lot on his plate. His mom always seemed to worry about him, but with all of her shifts and his lessons, they didn't talk about it much. He had learned and was proficient in all of the classes he took, but he knew he could always do better. After all, he was useless according to his classmates. He knew that he couldn't take what they said seriously and to just ignore it, but he couldn't sometimes. He was heading to his class and was practicing his parkour at the moment since the streets were pretty empty. The two teaching him turned out to be married and combined the classes since they knew what he was trying to do. They had asked him if he could come in early so that he could meet their son and his friends. He didn't get why they wanted to meet him, but he didn't mind it. He was jogging slightly and humming under his breath to his music. He didn't notice the group of kids behind him either as he picked up the pace a little before jumping over a trash can, landing on a bench before flipping off it and landing in a crouch. The group of kids began clapping and cheering. He jumped a little before looking at the group. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to bother you guys, he replied automatically when they began walking up to him. Are you kidding? That was awesome. The one with straight black hair and sharp teeth shouted with stars in his eyes. Sorry, I'm really bad with people. He answered, still a little nervous. No worries, man. Neither is our buddy Kirishima here. The pink girl with horns assured as she laid an arm over the black-haired one. Yeah, he gets all shy. The blonde with the lightning bolt teased as he nudged the black-haired one, making him blush a little, and nudged his friend back. Wait, I've seen you somewhere before. One with large elbows said, looking at him, as he still hadn't stood up straight yet. Once he did, they all jumped back a little since they didn't expect him to be taller than they are. Whoa, dude, how much older are you? Kirishima asked. I'm only 12. He responded with a slight blush on his cheeks. Oh no, we didn't mean it like that. It's just you're our senpai then. The blonde answered while waving his hands. We never even introduced ourselves. My name's Ishido Mina. This is Kaminari Denki, Shiro Hanta, and Kirishima Ijuro. Ishido greeted, pointing to all of them. Oh, My name is Midoriya Izuku. I should probably go. Actually, I need to meet up with my TE teachers. He gestured widely behind him. Or I didn't mean to keep you, Midoriya-senpai. Have a good day. They shouted to him as he began running again. He blushed slightly at the name, but waved goodbye. Midoriya, it's good to see ya. Haku yelled as she saw him enter. What's wrong, honey? You look flustered. Sakura said as they both walked up to the boy who was panting. There were these kids, and they said I was cool, then started calling me senpai. He yelled the last part like he was describing a car accident. Oh, Midoriya, honey, they just thought you were cool, is all, don't worry. And we warned the kids to calm down a little around you, too. Sakura said, trying to calm down the boy at least a little. Yeah, don't worry about it. Ijiro will love you. Izuku looked up shocked. Kirishima, Ijiro. The two nodded their head confused. That was one of the kid that I dash. Hi, moms. Oh, Midoriya-senpai. I didn't know my moms were your teachers. The group of four ran up to the three, making the two adults smirk. Ijiro, you didn't tell us you knew little Midoriya here. Sakura said, still smirking at Izuku. Oh, we met on our way here, actually. He was awesome, he dash. Ijiro went on a tangent on what Izuku was doing as the older blushed and tried to hide his face in his hands. Okay, that's enough. Haku giggled out as she led Izuku to the training area. He still needs to work if he's going to be here. Izuku nodded his head, going to change into spandex shorts, a tank top, and some knee and elbow pads before coming back out and stretching to loosen up a little. He looked over and saw the four others messing around a little. He smiled slightly. He wished he had something like that, but he was happy that none of them were alone. Okay, Midoriya, since it is one of your off days, how about just doing some of your normal runs, and then whatever you want. Haku already began to do her own routine. Sound good, Haku-sensei? The woman nodded her head and went back to work, and Izuku started a run. Hey, you four, you might want to watch this. Haku yelled to the other kids. They all looked over and watched as Izuku jumped over a few foam boxes before jumping from the tallest one. He reached up and grabbed the edge of a cement wall and pulled himself up. Wow, that's so cool. Mina cheered. Izuku blushed, but kept focus on the task at hand. He ran across the edges and climbed up higher every once in a while until he got to a part where it was only railing. He balanced on a part for a moment and took a few breaths before crouching, then jumping off and landing a roll. Wow, holy CRP. He blushed a little more before standing up and catching a water that was thrown to him. Good job, Midoriya. Go get some water, then we'll go from there. To say Izuku was exhausted would be lying. He was dying honestly. Going from only talking to his teachers, mother, and the Bakugas to talking to four new people that were all very excitable was different. When he walked into the house, he saw his mother sitting on the couch watching TV. He walked over there before flopping on her lap with a sigh. Hi, honey. How was today? She asked through laughs. MHHHH. It's not funny. They were so talkative and nice. He said like he was complaining. Isn't that good, though? A change from everything. I mean, yeah, but it was just a lot. They were really nice, though. He smiled up at her. She pet his hair. As she did so, she realized how much longer his hair had gotten. Oh, do you want a haircut? It has been a while. Izuku sat up and saw his own hair length. It was getting closer to the bottom of his ears. Maybe. I'm not sure. I kind of like it long. She smiled at him and nodded her head. Of course, sweetie. Now let's go ahead and make dinner. Honey, get up. I'll be leaving soon. Inko called from the kitchen as she got dressed. I know, Mom. Izuku shouted while he jumped from the stairs and landed in the living room. He had on shorts and a tank top again since he was supposed to go on a run. You look amazing, honey. She turned him around, seeing his hair in a small ponytail. Now, here's any money you might need. Get groceries on the way back, and make sure to stay hydrated. She kissed him on the cheek, making him laugh a little. I know, Mom. I know. Have a good day. Make sure you tell Grandma Chio I said hello. She was a woman that had started volunteering at his mom's hospital. I love you. Love you too. She went out the door and headed to work while Izuku got around to go for his run. He grabbed his phone, headphones, and a water bottle before he headed out the door with his keys. After his run, he decided to go to the beach. He had been working on cleaning up the beach for a while so he could build up muscle outside of lessons. Once he got to the beach, he set his stuff down and began humming slightly as he picked up garbage. He was so busy cleaning and hopping over all the obstacles that he didn't notice someone watching. Well, actually, that's what the kid thought. Izuku had noticed him as soon as he stopped walking and watched Izuku. Once he cleared a good area, he decided to walk over and get a drink and sit down. The person still hadn't left, though. He sat up and turned to them with a smile. "You can sit down if you want. I don't bite, promise." He joked, making the person smile at least. The two were silent until Izuku decided to speak again. "My name's Izuku Midoriya." The person looked at him and stared before answering. "Shinso Hitoshi." Izuku nodded before he stood up almost abruptly. "Well, I'm going to do a little more work. You're welcome to join in if you want." He smiled before going back to moving the garbage out of the way. He did notice, though, that Shinso hadn't moved yet. After another hour, he decided to call it a day and walk back over to Shinso, who still hadn't moved yet. "Well, you want to go get some lunch?" The other seemed shocked that Izuku was even talking to him. "I don't have any money." Izuku smiled brighter. "That's fine, I'll treat you." The boy followed him, even though he seemed a little nervous about it. "Why are you taking a complete stranger to lunch?" Shinso asked, not meeting the other's eyes. "Why were you watching a complete stranger?" Izuku asked with a smirk, being able to catch the other's eyes. But it was because Izuku thought about it for a moment. It wouldn't be obvious to most people, but since Izuku worked with a lot of small pieces and focused on all the details, he noticed that he was skinnier than he needed to be. He didn't miss the subtle marks around his mouth. "I don't really know." Seemed fun. The other looked at him confused, but shrugged him off. "Why did you follow a stranger?" Depending on his answer, Izuku was going to offer something. "You seem nice enough." Izuku nodded his head. If what he thought was true, he was going to drag someone to his mom later. Most people wouldn't do that." Shinso flinched a little, but then again, most people don't offer lunch to a complete stranger. Once they made it to the downtown area, Izuku watched for Shinso to look at a place. He wasn't really surprised when the other's eyes settled on a cat cafe for a minute. Let's go there." Izuku made it seem like he came up with the idea, though he could see the subtle signs of happiness on the other's face. They were both silent for the most part, but neither seemed to mind it. Until Izuku got curious. "So, what's your quirk?" He saw the other try to suppress the violent flinch at the question. The other started to avoid eye contact, and even shrunken on himself. "I'm quirkless." The other looked surprised, "So whatever your answer is, I'm not going to push you away, but I won't push for an answer either." Shinso seemed to calm down after that, but still didn't look up. "Brainwashing." Izuku nodded his head. "Is it response-based, or do you have to do it through contact? Can someone break out, or do you have to let them go?" Izuku asked a few questions because, 1, he was genuinely curious, and 2, to make sure the other knew he wasn't afraid to talk to him still. "It's, response-based, and they have to sort of be pushed somehow to be knocked out of it, or feel pain." Izuku nodded and wrote it down on one of the napkins. They had found out he had almost photographic memory, so him writing it down now would make sure he knew later. "Oh, that's really cool. You plan on being a hero?" Izuku asked. He was generally interested. "Yumie, I want to be like Eraserhead." Izuku had stars in his eyes. "Really? Me too. He's so cool, honestly. And his fighting style is actually hard to follow." Izuku kept talking about Eraserhead, with Shinso jumping in and adding his own thoughts. After a while, with the two eating and talking, it was almost time for Izuku to head home. "Hey, do you have a phone?" Izuku asked, pulling his out. Yeah." He pulled his phone out and handed it to Izuku. "Why?" "Well, to exchange numbers, right? I mean, we're friends after all." Izuku explained with a blinding smile. "Oh, Shinso shrugged his shoulder, but Izuku could see the happiness in his eyes. "And call or text if you ever need anything." Shinso nodded seriously, even if it's something you think is silly. Soon the two said goodbye as Izuku pulled out his phone again and called his mom. "Hi, honey. What's up? I met someone today, but something's wrong with his home life. I'm going to see if I can help him, and if I can, is it okay if of course, honey. I would love to have him over. Don't worry about anything." The next night, Izuku was woken up by his phone ringing loudly. He woke up a little confused and saw it was Shinso. "Shinso, everything okay?" It was almost silent, but he could hear crying, "Shinso, talk to me, what's happening?" He was already getting his shoes and jacket on. "I don't know. I dash. It's okay. I'm on my way. Can you tell me where you are? Izuku ran out the door and began running, even though he didn't really know where he was going. On XX Street, the light blue house with a white door in and a black car in the driveway. Izuku looked for the street and turned down it. He didn't like how it sounded like he was having trouble speaking either. It was like gritted teeth or a muzzle. He picked up the pace until he saw the house. Shinso, can you get outside? Or near a window? There was some shuffling before a window opened near Izuku. Okay, I see it. Back up a little, okay. The wall of the house was obviously straighter than the one at the gym, but he could manage. He took a few steps back before sprinting forward and used a little of the house to get up. He gripped onto the window edge and pulled himself up before silently entering the room. Once he was in, he felt someone tackle him and hug him. He looked down and moved Shinso a little and saw the muzzle. I'm sorry, it took a while to get here. He unclasped the muzzle and set it down before hugging the younger again. Now I need to get you out of here, okay? So grab anything you want. The younger nodded before letting go and grabbing a bag that was under his bed. Izuku felt a little bad that it was only a slightly packed bag he wanted. Okay, now hold on. Izuku picked him up and climbed out the window before falling and going into a roll, but made sure that the younger didn't get hurt. You okay? When he received a nod, he set the other down. Okay, I'm going to take you to my house. We'll rest. Then in the morning deal with this, okay? Shinso nodded but seemed a little sluggish. Okay, up. He then carried Shinso on his back to his house. When Aizawa decided to go out for a patrol, he expected to see a few muggings, robberies, the usual. He, however, didn't expect to see a 14-year-old jump into a window and carry out a 12 to 13-year-old, and then carry him on his back. He trailed them for a minute before deciding to drop behind them. He also wasn't expecting the older to notice him and turn towards him with a deadly glare. Why are you carrying a kid on your back? Aizawa asked with his quirk activated. The teen looked pissed before shocked. Your eraser head. That threw him off a little. Answer the question. The teen stared at him before looking back to see if the other was still asleep. I met him a few days ago. I told him to call me if anything happened. He had marks around his mouth and looked like he was malnourished. He called me crying and told me where he was. When I got there, he was wearing a muzzle, and it looks like he's been hit a few times. Aizawa was shocked. A 14-year-old had just saved a random kid's life because the kid called him. Where are you taking him? The teen seemed to think again. My house. Treat any wounds. Make him food if he's hungry. Let him sleep. Then in the morning go with my mom to work to get him actually treated and talk to the cops. See if he can stay with me and my mom permanently. That shocked him even more. Most people would have left him alone and just have taken him to the cops or hospital to let the system deal with it all. Aizawa stared at him and thought about what he was going to do. Fine, take this. He handed the boy a piece of paper with his number on it. Tomorrow, when you go to the doctor's, call me. Got it. The teen seemed shocked. Oh, he is sure. Aizawa nodded before leaving the two, though he was actually following to make sure they made it to the house safe. When they got back, the lights were on and Inko had been pacing while looking worried. When Izuku opened the door, she was about to shout, but saw the sleeping kid on her son's back. Izuku, what happened? She whispered while looking at the boy. I told him to call me if anything happened. He called me and was crying, so I rushed over. Is it okay if we come with you to work tomorrow? You should get checked out. Inko nodded her head. Do you want to wake him up? See if he's hungry. She started walking to the kitchen. He nodded and slowly set the younger on the couch before shaking him slightly. Shinso. The boy slowly opened his eyes and blinked a couple times. Hey, are you hungry? He looked around for a minute before nodding his head. Okay, I'll get you a sandwich. Any preference? Peanut butter if that's okay. Sure thing. He walked to the kitchen and saw his mom looking for a few supplies to give him a small check over. She walked into the living room, and Shinso panicked for a minute, about to run. It's okay. I'm Izuku's mother and a nurse. Do you have any injuries? The boy seemed to just stare at her. Izuku. Her son walked out with some food and gave it to the other. Here, I got it. You can go to bed, Mom. She nodded and went back to her room. Is it okay if I treat your injuries? Why is she nice? Izuku looked up from looking at Shinso's arms. Yep. She tries to help anyone. She's honestly my hero. He joked as he began cleaning any old and new wounds on him. After Shinso ate and was treated, Izuku went to grab a blanket and pillow. He set the pillow down and sat down next to Shinso, but felt a pressure on his shoulder and saw the younger asleep. Izuku smiled and decided not to move him too much and lay down, letting Shinso use him as a pillow. In the morning, the three went to the car and drove to the hospital. Okay, Izuku, you and Shinso can head to. She pulled out an empty chart. Go to room 15, and I'll be in there with Chio, okay? Izuku nodded and led Shinso into the room where they both sat on the bed. Oh, Eraserhead wanted me to call him. Shinso's eyes widened. You have Eraserhead's number. Where did you get that? Shinso asked, looking amazed. The other night. He wanted to make sure you were okay. It looked like the younger was too starstruck as Izuku called the hero. Hello. A tired voice answered the phone. Hi. We met last night, and you told me to call you when we got to the hospital. There was rummaging on the other side of the phone. Okay, I'll be there soon. The man hung up. Izuku looked a little offended at the phone as he walked back over to the other. I don't know how to feel about the fact that my favorite hero just hung up on me. It wasn't long till Chio walked into the room and saw the two boys talking. It's good to see you again, dear. Glad you aren't hurt again. She joked. No, Grandma Chio, but this is Shinso. He stepped out of the way, showing the woman. Shinso. Nice to meet you, Shinso. My name is Dr. Chio, but Izuku and his mother call me Grandma Chio. She offered a hand that he slowly shook now. Any injuries I should know about? Shinso looked to Izuku, who smiled. He's malnourished, though it's not extreme. Some dehydration, bruising on his right side, a few scars on his chest, but other than that, everything is superficial. Chio nodded her head. Okay, I'll give you a once-over, then we'll give you an 4 and some food. If needed, I'll use my quirk and fix you right up. Shinso nodded his head, but held onto Izuku's arm throughout the whole thing. Sorry, let me answer this. Izuku picked up his phone. Hello. Deku, where have you been? I haven't seen your sorry, but for weeks. Izuku laughed as he heard the other scream into the phone. Sorry, Kaken. I've been busy, you know that. I'll make sure to stop by later, okay? You can meet me at the gym later and see how well your fighting's gotten. Izuku teased, knowing it would rill up the other. Oh, it's on Deku. The other hung up as Izuku glared at the phone. Everyone keeps hanging up on me today. That got Shinso to laugh and lighten up a little. Oh, you think that's funny? Izuku asked with a smile. The other started laughing harder. It wasn't long either till his phone went off again. He glared and answered it. Swear to God, if you hang up on I will dash. Sorry. I'll make sure not to do it again. Izuku's face heated up. But I'm here with a friend of mine. What room are you in? Right, sorry, I'll be down there in a second. He hung up this time and turned to Shinso. I'll be back in a minute, okay? If you need anything, hit this button, and my mom will come check on you, okay? Shinso nodded as Izuku walked out the door, heading to the entranceway. When he made it there, he saw Eraserhead with another man talking to his mom. Oh, sweetie, just in time. Inko turned and gave her son a hug. I have to go. One of the patients went into shock. We'll be back, okay? Love you. She seemed to run before shouting orders. Sorry about that. Anyway, we're over here. Izuku began to lead them to the room. I'm Detective Naomasa, by the way. I want to help in Shinso's case. Izuku looked at the man and smiled. That's fantastic. They walked into the room where Shinso was talking to Chio. Oh, you're back. Chio saw Eraserhead and smiled. And brought a friend, I see. I'll leave you to it, dear. She walked out of the room, leaving the four there. Okay, I'm Detective Naomasa. Can you tell me your name, age, and quirk? Shinso grabbed onto Izuku's arm again as he answered. Shinso Hitoshi 12 and brainwashing. Izuku felt his hold tighten, but didn't react. Okay, can you tell me what growing up was like? Izuku put his hand over Shinso's, helping him calm down a little. Me. Parents were killed in a villain attack. After that, I was tossed around in foster care because of my quirk, and I was in this home for almost a year. Izuku felt Shinso tighten his hold, but just kept smiling. They made me wear a muzzle because of my quirk, and if talked they'd hit me for it. Or wouldn't feed me. Shinso stopped talking after that, and it was silent. You know, Shinso, isn't your favorite hero Eraserhead? Izuku asked with a teasing smile. The younger immediately blushed and punched him in the shoulder. "Shut up," he whispered, though Izuku could see the two adults smiling. "What? I don't say anything wrong." Shinso punched him again, making Izuku laugh. The hospital visit went smoothly after that, though Izuku did end up having to ask Eraserhead for an autograph for the both of them. "We got his autograph," Shinso whispered in amazement as Izuku walked them back home. "I know, it's pretty cool," Izuku said with the same amazement, though he was a little more focused on not getting lost. "Wait, does this mean I live with you now?" Shinso asked, a little confused, though Izuku didn't blame him since Inko had already been working on it. "Yep, it also means I get to be your big brother." Izuku nudged him in the shoulder. Shinso blushed a little. "I've never really had an older brother," he admitted. Izuku smiled and nudged him again. "I've never had a younger brother, so we'll learn this together." Once the two finally made it, they were sitting in the kitchen while Izuku began cooking dinner. "So Shinso, have any idea what you want to do when you're older?" Izuku asked, turning his body a little so the other knew he was listening. I want to be a hero, underground though." Izuku smiled. "Have you done any training yet?" The other seemed stumped. "No, I never really got the chance to." Izuku smiled and turned the stove off. "Well, how about you join me for my training? I go to gym almost every day to train, gotta be prepared." Shinso seemed to light up at that. "Really?" Izuku nodded his head as he handed the other their food. "Warning though, it's a little intense, and there are sometimes other kids there, and another person usually joins me on weekends." Izuku explained. He didn't want the other to be scared by them. "Are they nice?" Izuku had to think about it for a second. Kids at the gym are nice, though really loud, and the other, well, he's not mean. Just kind of a brat, but he won't be one if it bothers you. Shinso nodded his head and thought about it. "Okay, as long as I can leave if it gets too much." Izuku nodded his head in understanding. The next day, when Izuku woke up, he got into his exercise clothes and woke up Shinso. "Hey, you want to come today?" Shinso blinked a couple times, but nodded his head. "Okay, I have some extra clothes that should fit." Izuku grabbed an extra water for when Shinso would need it and some extra money for lunch. Once Shinso came downstairs, there was banging at the door. "Hi, Kakin. You ready too?" Yeah, Deku. Who's the guy joining us?" Shinso stepped out from behind Izuku and waved slightly. "This is Shinso, play nice." Though Izuku sounded playful, he did send a look telling Bakugo to lay off a little. "Whatever, let's go, name's Baku." Izuku smiled at the two. Shinso. As they walked, Izuku was happy to see the two getting along without much help from him. When they made it to the gym, Izuku could already tell the others were there today. "Midoriya, good to see you back. And you brought some others with you," Haku pointed out, getting the others' attention. "Bakugo," the group yelled before tackling him to the ground. "Get off me." The group only laughed before getting up and going to Shinso. "Hi, my name's Kaminari. This is Siro, Mina, and Kirishima." Shinso watched them for a moment. Shinso." After that, Shinso got dragged into the group as they all sort of messed around but trained at the same time. Izuku smiled as he practiced more parkour while dodging Haku, who was chasing him. "You ready to go, Izuku?" Inko asked as Izuku ran down the stairs. Shinso stared at him as he rushed around. "Yep, I have everything. I'll see you later. Bye, Mom. Bye, Toshi," he called before running out the door. "Don't forget to walk Hitoshi home." Shinso turned to Inko with a small blush and glare. "I can walk myself, Mom." Inko chuckled as Shinso squawked. Izuku walked up to the front building and saw everyone walking and looking confident. He shrunk back a little as he walked in and sat down, getting ready to take the written exam. It seemed pretty easy as he went through it. He had finished it halfway through the time and even went back over his answers before he handed in the packet and sat back down. When everyone was in the auditorium and the present Mike, began explaining the next part of their exam, he was even more nervous. They would be fighting robots. He might as well call it now, was all he could think as he stood in the back of his group. He looks nervous. One less person to beat. He glared at the ground as he dug his fingernails into his palms. "Go!" He jolted up and ran past everyone and entered the fake city. He saw a one-pointer right away and slid under it before seeing the wires exposed in the back of its neck and ripped them out. "See, That guy's got the idea. There are no countdowns in real life. Go, go, go. He was silently thankful for the head start, since he now was at least a point above everyone. He took down another one-pointer and a three-pointer in a similar way when he realized the three-pointer actually had a screen inside. It showed where other robots were at the time. Using that and a piece of pole, he found he was able to rack up 15 more points before it became a little harder to find robots people weren't already after. He was turning a corner when he saw Ruble about to fall on someone not paying attention. He raced forward and tackled the person out of the way. He looked them over quickly. "Hey, watch it, butt." He didn't say anything back, though, as he stood up and began running again. Thank Kid should be thankful he's not dead right now thanks to that green-haired one. Vlad King pointed out with a grunt. It's true, he saved a few other students in that time, and is ranking up not only villain points, but rescue points too. Another teacher commented, "He hasn't used his quirk either. It might be a mental quirk then." Nedzu smiled as he pulled up the student's file. Midoriya Izuku, quirkless. That shocked more teachers, but Aizawa recognized the name and face right away. "I remember him. He was the one that brought that abuse case to light a few years ago." Aizawa explained with a small, proud smile. "You like him, don't you?" Yamada teased. Aizawa glared at the other before looking back to the screen. "No, he just has potential and isn't stupid." Yamada awed, making Aizawa punch him in the stomach. Izuku had just helped another person to only get yelled at again when he felt a rumble. He looked up and saw everyone running from a giant robot. 0-pointer, he thought. He ran to where everyone was running from and saw most of them gone by now, except one girl that seemed to be having trouble. "Hey, is it just you?" The girl shook her head. "No, there's another girl back there." He looked from her to one of the alleys she had pointed to. "I'll be fine. Help her, please." "Does he have a death wish?" Aizawa glared at the screen. "No, there's another girl in that alley over there. If he doesn't make it, then him and the girl could be in serious trouble." He explained. Izuku made it into the alley and saw another girl holding her leg. He went over and scooped her up as carefully as possible before dashing out of the alley just as the building next to it was crushed. He was able to make it back to the front gate as time was called. Setting the girl down, slowly he sighed. "Sorry, are you okay?" She nodded and thanked him before Recovery Girl came and healed them both since Izuku had a few scraps and bruises. "There you go, sweetie. Can't have her mom worrying now, can we?" Izuku gasped quietly before nodding. "Right, thanks Grandma Chiyo." Once everything was done and over with, he packed his stuff up and was outside the school when someone grabbed onto him. "Hey!" He was slammed up against a wall and grunted as someone got at his face. You made me look weak." Izuku was a little confused until he realized that it was the first kid he saved. "If I didn't push you out of the way, then dash." Izuku was cut off as the guy punched him in the face. "Shut up. If I don't get in the hero course because of you, you're dead." He slammed Izuku against the wall again before walking away and out of the alley. Izuku slowly sank to the ground and felt his face. He had a bloody nose and busted lip. Sighing, he pulled out his first aid kit and fixed the busted lip. He looked at his phone and saw the time and cursed before packing it back up and running to Shinso's school. When Shinso was adopted by the Midoriyas, the bully had lessened. Inko didn't let it slide when she knew one of her kids was hurt, and he was one of her kids. So when she caught wind of it, she brought help to the school until they stopped it. It didn't lessen as much outside of school, though, at least until Izuku started walking him home. Sure, Shinso was more than capable of defending himself, but they all knew if someone said something, Shinso would get the blame. It also helped that Izuku looked like a delinquent every now and again. He often got hurt while training or even just working, so if he showed up in bandages and his glare, then the others would back off right away. "Hey!" He sighed and turned, seeing the usual group that bothered him, but Izuku was a little late. "Your brother not here to pick you up this time?" "Huh, that gives us some free time." The guy grabbed Shinso by his collar and was about to punch. "What do you think you're doing?" The four looked and saw Izuku in an unzipped tracksuit with a bandaged, busted lip and an old bloody nose with a glare. Shinso had to admit, if he saw that he would be terrified too. "We were just dash." Izuku cut them off and stepped forward. "You were letting my brother go, right? If not, then..." His glare deepened. The three other boys panicked and ran. Izuku sighed and smiled, turning to Shinso. You okay, Toshi? I'm not the one with BLD on my face. He saw Izuku jump a little before laughing. Yeah, happened during the exam. Nothing too bad. Let's go home. The two walked back to the house. Shinso stared at his brother. He might have been good at lying to everyone else, but Shinso knew when he saw someone else that was bullied or threatened. Izuku waited almost a week for his letter while the rest of his family and friends tried to convince him he made it into the hero course. There's no way you didn't, Deku. You kick major, but Katsuki reasoned while punching the bag Kirishima was holding. Yeah, you even saved some people, right? You had to get a little extra for that at least. It was super manly. Katsuki rolled his eyes at his black-haired friend. Those two are right, Izuku. If you don't, Mom will raise hell. Shinso pointed out from his spot on the floor. Izuku hopped off the rock wall and walked over to Shinso, who threw him a water bottle. Thanks, but what if they don't let me in cause I'm quirkless? All three stopped and looked at him. Izuku, Mom would kill them. Kirishima laughed while Katsuki rolled his eyes again. Ibags has a point. You may be quirkless, but you're not some useless extra. Kakan, you literally call me Deku. That got Kirishima to fall over laughing, while Shinso tried to contain his own laughter. F off. That's different. It's not my fault I couldn't F-read. Katsuki punched the punching bag hard enough that it hit Kirishima, knocking him over again. Ow. Baku bro, what the hell? Shut up, shitty hair. Izuku unlocked the door as he and Shinso finally made it back home. We're home, Izuku called, putting his stuff down on the side table. When neither heard a call back, they looked to each other. Mom, Shinso called this time as they both walked further into the house. Boys, it's here. She yelled with tears in her eyes while holding an envelope. What? Izuku grabbed the envelope and stared at it for a moment. Open it, Izuku. Shinso demanded while hanging off his brother's shoulders now. They all sat on the couch while Izuku opened it and a small disc popped out. The screen was black before flickering to life and showing Principal Nedzu. Hello, Midoriya, Izuku. I am Principal Nedzu. I am here to tell you your score and if you got in. First off, you did a fantastic job analyzing the area around you and using it to your advantage at times. And with that, you got 30 villain points. Inko and Shinso cheered. That normally isn't enough to get into the hero course, but there was another part to the test known as rescue points. It then began showing clips of Izuku saving other examines from Ruble and robots. You racked up quite a few by saving other students. That gave you a total of 90 points. It showed a scoreboard and showed Izuku getting into the top 10. Congratulations, Midoriya. You're in Class 1A of the hero course. It turned off as Inko and Shinso tackled Izuku into a hug while they all cheered. I made it, Izuku shouted as he and Shinso made it to the gym. The Baku squad, as they called themselves, along with Kirishima's moms, all jumped up. Hell yeah. Haku cheered as the Baku squad all tackled Izuku into a hug. Told you good job. You're manly as hell. Izuku laughed as they all yelled at him. Okay, kids, get off Midoriya, Sakura said as she helped the older boy up. See, as you made it, I think you deserve a little surprise. Izuku quirked an eyebrow. What are you talking about? Haku pulled out a box and walked towards Izuku. Oh no, you guys really didn't have to. He tried to push the box away, but they didn't let him. Open it. Open it. The group cheered while Katsuki and Shinso smirked at the boy. Izuku opened the box and slowly pulled out its contents. It was a black jacket with white sleeves, a neon green. On the left side of the jacket, on the back, was a neon green bunny face and green accents around the sleeves. Oh my god, I'm never taking this off. He felt the fabric and noticed it was similar to a lot of workout fabrics. We made sure it was breathable so you could wear it while you work out and stuff. Mina explained. Yeah, and look on the inside of the collar. Siro yelled, pointing to it. Izuku looked on the inside collar and almost cried. It had the words Squad Big Brother embroidered on it. Oh my god, guys. Never mind, he was crying now. This means now legally we're your problem now. Kaminari yelled as the group jumped on him again. Izuku was crying while they all hugged him. It was mine and Ibag's idea, You're getting it either way," Katsuki stated. Izuku smiled and pulled them all into a hug. "Let me go. Put me down, Deku," Katsuki and Shinso shouted, trying to escape the group hug. "No." Izuku was walking with his headphones in and his hair up as he walked to the store. He wore black ripped pants, a white t-shirt that said sweatshirt on it, and the jacket the group had gotten him. He wasn't paying attention as someone grabbed his arm and slammed him against a wall. He hit his head on the wall a little and shut his eyes before blinking and seeing who it was. "Well, if it isn't Izuku, Midoriya, heard you got into UA." He glared a little at seeing 3 boys standing in front of him. He never actually learned their names, though, since all they did was bully him and try to get him to hit one of them at least once. "Yeah, the hero course." He deadpanned, already ready to either run or take a beating. He couldn't risk them saying he caused the fight. The 2 on either side of the guy glared, and one even growled. "You think you're better than us, Midoriya?" Izuku directed his look to the one talking. "I really don't." "You're not. They probably only let you in because they felt bad." "Hey, yeah. They'll probably expel you on the first day." The 2 behind the leader began laughing a little. "Shut up." The 2 stopped laughing as the middle one spoke, "Though you aren't wrong. They'll realize soon enough that you aren't worth the time." Izuku's glare deepened. "Orway can show them." He pulled an arm back, ready to punch, until someone grabbed his wrist. "And what do you think you're doing?" The 3 turned in confusion, while Izuku's eyes widened in shock. "What's it to you?" the middle asked as he yanked his arm away from the man. "Other than the fact you almost hit the kid. I'm a pro hero. So tell me," the 3 jumped at the mention of being a pro, "what do you think you're doing?" The 2 lackeys ran, leaving the one in the middle who was still holding Izuku by his collar leave. He let go of Izuku before running out of the alleyway. Izuku rubbed his head a little before turning to the man. "Thanks, Eraserhead, but I should really dash." Eraserhead glared at him, making him stop. "Do they bother you a lot?" Izuku was caught off guard. "No, not really. Just light teasing normally." Izuku tried to lie, but Eraserhead didn't seem convinced. "You're lying." Izuku looked down a little. "Whatever. They should leave you alone now. If not, you still have my number." Then he left, and Izuku looked confused for a moment. "He just appears, then leaves." Izuku shouted, a little frustrated but more relaxed. Izuku was dressed in his uniform and walking the halls of UA a little lost. "Hey, you lost." He turned and saw an upperclassman with blonde hair. Yeah, little. Do you know where Class 1A is?" Izuku asked nervously. "Yep. Here, I'll lead you there." The 2 walked in silence. "My name is Mirio Togata. How about you?" "Oh, I'm Midoriya, Izuku." They stopped in front of a door where Izuku could already hear people yelling. "Here we are. Good luck, Midoriya." Mirio began walking away with a wave. "Thank you, Togata-senpai." Izuku walked into the classroom and was already more nervous. There was a group sitting on some desks while seeming to mess with their quirks, and even one using them on some other students. 2 people sitting next to each other with one drawing on the walls and the other smirking with her feet kicked up on a desk. The rest of them seemed either bored and didn't seem to care. He walked over to where his seat was and sat down before pulling out a notebook and writing down his analysis. He had been thinking of what he should use for a weapon. He knew he would want something for sure to use for technology and hacking, likely something for close range, something for long range, and some other support items he had seen other heroes use, just change more his style. "You 4, go to the principal's office." Izuku looked up and was shocked to see Eraserhead standing there with his quirk activated while looking at the 2 who were drawing on the wall and smirking, and another 2 that were messing with their quirks. "What?" "But we dash. I didn't ask for excuses, leave." The 4 all glared and walked out of the room. "The hell was that?" "Yeah. Who even are you?" Eraserhead glared again. "You 3 can join them and leave now." Izuku was really shocked. He hadn't seen so many people get expelled all at once, especially ones with strong quirks. "Everyone put these on and meet me outside." Before they even made it outside, 3 more people had been expelled and Izuku hadn't even seen it happen. When they did make it outside, though, there were only 9 other people left. "Today we'll be doing an apprehension test. You can use your quirks during the test." Most were quiet at this point, but of course some people had to speak up. "This'll be easy." "Yeah, they'll be lucky to even beat me once." Eraserhead sighed, and glared at them. You would think you learned by now. You can leave now. Throughout the test, another person had been expelled. Izuku was honestly just glad that he wasn't last, though, but it seemed the person that was last was pissed. They were soon expelled, only leaving Izuku and 5 other people at the end of it. Sir, Eraserhead looked to one of the only girls left. Why did you call it an apprehension test instead of a quirk apprehension test? Because one of you doesn't have a quirk. Izuku flinched, but none of them noticed. Though Izuku could hear them begin to talk about how a freak could do that and how dangerous it was for someone so useless, stop. They all grew quiet. If you think it's too dangerous for a quirkless person to do this, or you have issues with someone being quirkless, raise your hand. Izuku was the only one who didn't raise his hand. Great. You all can leave too then. UA doesn't allow quirk discrimination. Izuku ignored the glares thrown at him as the students left. He turned to Eraserhead once they left. You really shouldn't have done that. They all really are talented and are strong. You shouldn't let some quirkless kid dash. Eraserhead cut him off by placing a hand on his shoulder. Midoriya. Izuku flinched a little and didn't meet his eyes. You're not just some quirkless kid. You have potential, unlike them, and you're willing to give people a second chance no matter what. You let me choose who really deserves one. Izuku nodded his head. Good. Now go home, or I'll expel you too. Izuku walked out of UA that day shocked. He expected for the day to be crazy, but not that crazy. When he picked up Shinso from school that day, the younger noticed his weird behavior right away. Okay, what happened? You look like you just expelled. You didn't get expelled, did you? Izuku snapped out of it for a second and laughed a little. No, the exact opposite. Actually, everyone in my class was expelled except me. Shinso stared at him. What the F? Exactly. And my teacher was Eraserhead. He expelled everyone except me. The two walked quietly in shock until Shinso spoke up again. So, like, did he adopt you or something? Hitoshi. The next day, when Izuku was walking to class, he saw Mirio and 2 other people. Hey, Midoriya, you're still here. Izuku smiled and waved before walking up to them. Hey, yeah, I'm glad I'm still here too. It was nice running into you. Izuku walked away from them and walked into class, already seeing Aizawa laying in his sleeping bag. Good you're here early. Makes my life easier. He stepped out of the sleeping bag and gestured for Izuku to stand by him. We need to figure out your hero costume and support items you'll want or need. Izuku nodded his head. I saw you writing in a notebook labeled Hero Gear, mind showing me. Izuku blushed a little and pulled out the notebook from his bag and handed it to Aizawa. The teacher looked at it for a minute before writing some words on a board. Okay, you'll need to explain to me why you'll need these things. On the board it said long-range item, close-range item, grappling item, and computer. Well, for the computer, it would be something that would go on my arm like a small screen, so I would be able to write information down and be able to hack into things. I learned how to hack when I was younger, and I've gotten a lot better at it, and that could be helpful with security cameras and systems. For the long-range item, it would be easier to fight someone who fights at long range, and instead of trying to get close to them, I would be able to fight at a further range, and then try to get closer once they were weaker. Short range would be the same thing since I could fight hand-to-hand. It would help if they also had a weapon, but I couldn't block it. And for a grappling item, it would help me climb, travel, and pull people closer to me to attack them. Aizawa stared at him in almost shock. Then again, he did have a tendency to ramble a lot. Good. Do you have any ideas for the items? Izuku rubbed the back of his neck. For the short range, I could use a knife or Eskrima sticks since they could block and deal damage. If I did the Eskrima sticks, I could also add an electrical charge, so that if I hit someone with them while they were charged, it could knock the person out too. He explained quickly, with Aizawa nodding. The Eskrima sticks sound like a better idea, since you seem to have more ideas with them. What about the long-range item? Izuku looked down for a moment. Well, what about a gun? Aizawa looked at him, not with actual bullets. Unless they're needed, but more of RBB bullets and beanbag shots. They are less lethal and still do damage. It would be a lot safer to dash. Aizawa cut him off. Good. You at least have done research on them. I'll talk to Snipe and have him teach you all the safety rules and anything else you'll need. Izuku let out a breath of relief. Now what about the grappling item? Izuku blushed. When I came up with that. I was watching a video of you fighting, and I thought it was really cool how you use your capture weapon. So I thought something similar would work. Not the same thing though, since then, I'm just copying you obviously. But maybe something that would go on my arms that I could have under my sleeves. That way it's a hidden weapon and people don't expect it. Izawa nodded his head. Okay, we'll have to work on your movements then and see how well it'll work with certain styles and how you'll use it. Izuku smiled and nodded his head. You know a lot about building support items, it seems. Go to Power Loader and work with him on making your costume. Izuku nodded and walked out the door heading to the support room. Izuku walked to the support room and knocked on the door before opening it. How can I help you? Power Loader asked as Izuku walked in. Aizawa-sensei sent me here to work with you on my costume and support items. Power Loader paused and stared at him. Oh, you weren't expelled. Okay, well, do you have ideas for what you want? Izuku was confused but waved it off and showed him the notebook and the added information. Yeah. With this, it would be a good idea to use a curved piece of glass or strong plastic, since it would be harder to break if someone tried to attack that arm. Power Loader nodded his head. You seem to know your way around support items. Izuku blushed and rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, it's a hobby I picked up. I love building and taking apart stuff. Power Loader smiled. Great. Let's get to work on everything then. Snipe, the gun hero, turned to Aizawa. I need you to teach my student how to use a gun. The entire teacher's lounge went silent. You still have a student. You're giving them a gun. He activated his quirk. Yes and yes. Now will you teach him? He asked through gritted teeth to the other pro. Of course, Aizawa. Would it be better to do it after school or during? Aizawa had to think. He didn't know Izuku's schedule. I'll have to ask him. I'll get back to you later. He walked out of the teacher's lounge and down to the support room, where he heard someone talking excitedly. He opened the door to find Izuku writing out blueprints. If we make it a small bracelet and lace the capture weapon around it and my arms, it would be able to shoot it out like a grappling hook. And we could... Oh, hi, Aizawa-sensei. Izuku greeted, stepping away from the blueprints for a moment. Good to see you take this seriously then. Snipe want to know if it would be better to teach you gun training during school or after. Izuku thought about it for a second. Probably during, unless I would be able to leave and pick my brother up and bring him back. Wait, no, because I still have to train at the dojo and they would probably kill me if I didn't show up. Yeah, during would be better. He nodded his head and left to go tell Snipe. Izuku was going on his daily run before school. He knew he would do more running and exercising again later during and after school, but he still liked to keep a consistent schedule. Once he was done with his run, he would have to walk Shinso and Katsuki to school, then run home, grab his stuff, and change before running to UA. He was honestly lucky that he didn't live that far from the school. He was running back to his house after dropping off Shinso and Katsuki when he accidentally ran into someone, which was to be expected since he was listening to music and running. Oh no, I am so sorry. Are you okay? He asked, standing up to help the man up. I'm fine, problem child. He quickly realized that it was Aizawa with present mic and Midnight. Oh, CRP. Sorry, Aizawa-sensei. I wasn't watching where I was going. Aizawa rolled his eyes, standing up fully now. I said it's fine. He looked and realized that Izuku was in shorts, a tank top, and wearing a sports jacket. Shouldn't you be dressed for school? Oh, I always run in the mornings. I just dropped off Toshi and Kakin at school, so I was heading back to grab my stuff, then run to school and change. He explained with a smile. Aizawa quirked an eyebrow, but sighed. Just don't be late. Izuku smiled and waved before going back to his run. God, you're such a dad. Midnight teased once Izuku was out of earshot. No, I'm not. Show. You just parented him. And I can guarantee that when he comes to class, you're going to give him water, so he's hydrated. Present Mid declared. Aizawa was silent. Oh my God, he was. Midnight shouted while laughing. When Izuku walked into his class, a bottle of water was thrown at him that he caught. Thank you. Aizawa nodded his head. You'll be working with Power Loader more today to finish everything you need. Izuku nodded his head, putting his bag down and taking his blazer off. I also want to get a look at your analysis, so hand me any notebooks you have. Izuku was a little shocked. He didn't think his analysis was much. Are you sure? Aizawa shot him a glare, making him shut up and take the 2 notebooks he had out and handed them to Aizawa. One was labeled Heroes, while the other was Villains. Good. Now go to the support department. When lunch hits, get food and come back here so we can do actual classes. Izuku nodded his head, grabbing another notebook before heading out. Aizawa read through the 2 notebooks as we went to the teacher's lounge. It was break when the other teachers came in to see Aizawa sitting at his desk looking shocked. Shouldn't you be with your kid? Midnight joked again. Shut up and look at this. He handed her the hero notebook that was open to her page at the moment. He's analyzed all of us, figured most of our weaknesses and how to counter them, and anything else about us. Wow, he even figured out yours. Midnight gasped, flipping through some of the pages. Aizawa was now looking through the villain notebook. There were even more ways for the person to be taken down and the team-ups that would be best against those people. His analysis on villains is even better, though. With the heroes, he looked for things in their style to fix or learn. With the villains, he sees how to take them down and what heroes will be best to fight them. Hey, Aizawa-sensei, Lunch Rush told me to bring you food too, since he knows you haven't eaten. You need to eat, Immo. Why is everyone staring at me? Izuku asked as he closed the door with a foot since his arms had food in them. Kid, why didn't you show me this sooner? Aizawa asked. Waving one of the notebooks, he blushed a little. I know they aren't that good. It's more just a hobby, really. He set the plates down on Aizawa's desk, as he explained. Just a hobby. Midoriya, you figured out how to take down a villain that a lot of the heroes haven't caught yet. Izuku quirked an eyebrow before seeing what page he was on. Oh, Phantom. He's easy, though. His quirk lets him phase through stuff. But if you look at the videos, it depends on the density of the stuff, so you could just set a trap with a higher density, and when he phases through, have someone inside take him down, and if he somehow gets out, have the place surrounded. He explained with a shrug of his shoulders. He really didn't think it was that important. Problem child. Izuku jumped a little. I'm going to show you a video, and I want you to analyze both parties, then tell me what you can figure out. Got it? Izuku nodded nervously. Aizawa opened his computer, typing a few things before turning it and pressing play on the video. As soon as it started, the teachers heard him mumble while he put one of his hands over his mouth slightly. The video wasn't long, though. Only about 30 seconds or so. Tell me what you saw. The one in all black is about 5 feet 7 inches and likely weighs about 160 male, and their quirk seems to let them break their bones out and use them as weapons. That's why their knife was oddly shaped and close to white while still having BLD on it. Though wherever they create the new weapon is useless for about 20 seconds until the bone grows back. The person in the blue and gold was about the same height and weighs around 180, female, and their quirk lets them have control over small metals. They can mold them into different objects, but the larger the object, the more fragile it is and easy to break. They can't seem to focus much when molding the weapon, though it only takes a few seconds to create the weapon. He spoke quickly, but Aizawa was still able to understand him. Good. And you're right. Tomorrow bring in any other notebooks you have. I'm going to teach you coding. Now go eat lunch, then head to your other classes. Izuku nodded his head and smiled before grabbing his food and walking out the door. God, you're such a dad. You're so proud of him. Midnight teased more. Aizawa pushed her before sitting down and eating the food Izuku had brought him. After school, he said goodbye to Aizawa before going to the bathroom and changing back into his street clothes. He put on some music as he walked the streets. He had a few more minutes until he needed to pick up Shinso and the others from school. He was walking past an alley when something caught his attention. He paused his music and looked down the alley, making sure not to reveal himself. Oh, really? What's someone with a weak quirk like yours going to do? He looked closer and realized it was Kirishima they were cornering. What do you think you're doing? Izuku asked, stepping out with his arms crossed. The group jumped, and Kirishima looked happy but confused at seeing Izuku there. Oh, you're Shinso's older brother, right? We were just talking with our friend Senpai. One of the guys stuttered out. Izuku quirked an eyebrow, but didn't take his eyes off of the group when he talked to Kirishima. Right. Kirishima, are you friends with these guys? Kirishima shook his head, and the group shot him a glare. That's what I thought. So what are you doing? None of them answered. He uncrossed his arms and took a few steps forward, making them all jump and run past him. He didn't lighten his glare until they were all gone. You okay? They didn't hurt you, right? Izuku asked Kirishima, who looked amazed. I'm fine. That was so cool, though. You just glared and they ran away. Izuku blushed and rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, before I met you guys, they always tried to start fights with Toshi, so I would walk up covered in bandages and a glare. According to Toshi and Kakin, I have a reputation. He joked as the two walked out of the alley. Kiri, why'd you run off? Mina yelled while tackling the other boy with Siro and Kaminari not far behind. He just laughed, but didn't answer the question while Katsuki and Shinso walked up to them. You guys ready to go? Izuku was writing in one of his notebooks about a new hero that had shown up. It was getting pretty late too, and he knew he needed to sleep, but he couldn't. It felt like he wasn't doing enough about something. He knew he was training enough with the combination of school and the gym. He was smart enough if what Aizawa had said was anything to go by. Then what was it? He thought about it more than he realized the problem. He didn't have a job. He didn't need one, of course, since his mom made enough money to make sure everyone was comfortable and having enough for other activities and stuff they wanted, but it felt like he wasn't pulling his weight. Closing the notebook, he turned to his computer and typed in place his hiring. He knew he needed something that would have a flexible schedule, let him do work even though he was 16, and something simple so he didn't overwork himself. That's when he found it, a small cafe. It was looking for someone who didn't mind working later and heavy lifting. He wrote down the number and decided to ask his mom about it in the morning. The next morning, Izuku was nervous. He had done his research on the place, and it looked like a good place to work. He would be the only other worker there since it was only the owner, and she just needed a little help with heavy lifting, baking, and customers. He walked downstairs, where Inko was watching TV at the moment since she had the weekend off. Morning, Mom, he called, walking into the room. She turned and smiled at him. Morning, sweetie. She stared at him for a moment. Okay, what is it? She asked with a teasing smirk. He jumped a little and blushed. What? You always get this look on your face when you want to ask or do something. He blushed more and looked down. He rubbed the back of his neck before finally looking up. I want to get a job. She looked shocked. I know I don't need one. After all, you make good money and we live comfortably, and I know my schedule is usually pretty busy, but I really want one, because then it feels like I'm actually helping in some way. Or dash, Inko cut him off by placing her hands on his shoulders. Izuku, honey, it's okay to want to get a job, but you know it'll be difficult with school, right? He smiled and nodded his head. I know. That's why I did a little research last night. I found this place that needs an extra hand, and it works around my schedule. She smiled and nodded her head. Okay, honey, as long as you're sure. You can head out there later, but please get some more sleep, okay? I can tell you're still tired. He laughed a little before hugging his mom and going back upstairs. When he woke back up, he immediately got dressed in a white shirt, black jeans, and his jacket before calling the place. Hello, this is Mayumi, owner of Sunflower Cafe. How can I help you? A woman spoke over the phone in a cheery voice. Hi, I was calling because I saw your ad for another worker, and I was wondering if I could come in and apply. There was a squeal for a second. Of course. Just tell me your name and come on in. Right. My name's Midoriya Izuku. I'll be in soon. He hung up after a quick goodbye. He grabbed his phone and his house keys before leaving a quick note and going to the cafe. He made it there pretty quickly and walked in. He looked around and saw how calm and homey it felt. Instead of normal seating, there were booths, lounge chairs, and 2 windowsills with padding to sit. There were fairy lights hanging from the ceiling and a few normal lights so you could actually see, along with a few lamps and bookshelves. The front counter had a small window showing baked goods, all seeming to have a soft theme almost, while the other side of the counter had free space with a few chairs. A woman with black straight hair, dark skin, she stood almost gracefully behind the counter with a wide smile. Hello, how can I help you? She asked politely as he walked up to the counter. Hi, I'm Midoriya Izuku. I'm here about the job. She seemed to brighten up at that and walked around the counter quickly. Thank you so much for calling. Shall we get started with the interview? Thank you for letting me come. And of course. The two sat down at one of the booths, and Mayumi turned to him. Okay, first, your name, age, school, and quirk. She pulled out a notepad. Right. My name's Midoriya Izuku. I'm 16, I go to UA, and I am quirkless. He answered the last one a little nervous. Really? What course are you in at UA? She asked with wonder in her eyes. He was shocked for a moment before answering. Oh, I'm in Class 1A of the Hero course. She nodded her head and wrote it down. Okay, now why do you want this job? He had to think how to word it for a moment. Well, my mom works as a nurse at the hospital and is busy a lot. I have school, I train at a gym, and I have my little brother to look after, but I felt like I wasn't doing enough to help, so I looked for a job that would work with what I can do and around my schedule. I found this place, and it seemed like a good fit. He explained with a bright smile. You're honest, I like that. You also have a very happy and welcoming face, which is also good for business. And you wouldn't mind working late hours. I usually only stay open till about midnight, since there are some underground heroes that come by every now and again. Nope. I usually have issues sleeping anyway and don't get to bed around 1 a.m., so this would give me something to do. She smiled and wrote down more. Okay, and one last question. Do you have any skills? Izuku had to think as to what counted as skill. Well, I know how to cook, bake, mix drinks like smoothies, not alcohol. I'm pretty good at fighting gymnastics, Perker. I know how to operate firearms, I can analyze stuff, I can create support items, hack stuff, oh. I know sign language too. Mayumi stared at him for a moment. Soy could essentially be a bodyguard, but you want to work at a cafe. He blushed a little, but nodded his head. Well, okay then. When do you want to start? Shinso had woken up a little confused. First it was the fact that Izuku wasn't there. Then it was the note on the table. He had read it over a few times and was still lost. Why was Izuku getting a job? He didn't get much more time to think over it, though as the front door opened, revealing the boy in question. Toshi, you're awake. Izuku greeted, kicking his shoes off. Why are you getting a job? He asked, holding the note up. Oh, well, I kind of felt like I wasn't helping enough. Shinso quirked an eyebrow. That's not something you answer with another question. Izuku laughed a little awkwardly. You know, you and Aizawa-sensei sound really similar. Shinso blushed and glared, but I just felt I could help more, so I decided to get a job, and they hired me. I start tomorrow, actually. Shinso continued to glare at his brother, but he seemed more exhausted than anything. Whatever, just don't die. Izuku laughed and dragged his brother into a hug. You care. Hey, let me go. Adding the cafe to Izuku's schedule was a lot easier than he expected. He would go to school, pick the others up, go to the gym for an hour, head to the cafe, and finish there before doing a few exercises and going home. He hadn't worked any later shifts, which he was silently glad for. Since he added it, it did make him a little more worn out, but he also slept better thanks to it. Sure, it wasn't the best sleep schedule, but it was better than nothing. Izuku was at the gym working on a punching bag when his phone started ringing. Hey, your phone's ringing. Kirishima called from the bench. Izuku turned. Who is it? It says Mayumi. Izuku held up his hand as Kirishima threw it. He caught it and quickly answered it. Is everything okay? There were a few noises before she spoke. Sort of. There's a family emergency, and I was wondering if you could come in early and work the night shift. I know it's a lot to ask, Izuku cut her off. It's no problem. When do you need me in? Can you be here in 10? Izuku looked at the time. Yep. I'll change really quickly and take over. I hope everything goes okay. Thanks, Midoriya. You're a lifesaver. They both said goodbye before Izuku quickly grabbed his stuff. I gotta go, guys. I'll see you all later. He left quickly, confusing the group, though Shinso could guess what happened already. Daemon, where's Deku going in such a rush? Bakugo asked, looking at the door. His boss called him into work. Shinso explained while lying on the floor. He has a job. Izuku walked into the cafe and immediately went to the back and changed into his uniform. The place didn't actually have a uniform, but the general attire was business casual, so he wore a black button-up and blue jeans with his hair tied up. Thank you for coming in so suddenly, Midoriya. I owe you. Mayumi greeted, hugging the boy. He hugged back before separating. Don't worry about it. Now you go and deal with your emergency. He playfully shoved her before grabbing a waist apron and a notepad with a pen. Luckily, the place wasn't busy seeing, as there was only a businessman there at the moment who was working on his computer, so Izuku took the time to wipe down the tables, organize the silverware, make a few extra sweets, and doing some of his schoolwork on the counter. A few people came in throughout the day, but nothing big happened, or at least until it got later in the night. He called his mom and Shinso to let them know that he was going to be home later than usual since Mayumi needed him there. His mom told him to make it home safe, while Shinso told him that he would wait for him in the living room when he got home. It was getting closer to midnight as he whipped down a few more tables and took care of trash and dishes when the bell on the door rang. Just a moment. He called from the kitchen. He put down everything and whipped his hands before walking back to the front. "Hi. How can I dash?" He stopped mid-sentence when his eyes landed on Aizawa, who seemed just as shocked. "Midoriya, what are you doing here?" he asked with a sigh. Izuku chuckled and rubbed the back of his neck. Well, I work here, actually." That seemed to shock the teacher just as much, but what can I get you? Izuku glossed over the fact that he was 16 and had a job, even though he didn't actually need one. "Right, I'll take a black coffee." Izuku nodded and began making it. It was slightly awkward before Izuku decided to break the silence. "So did you already eat dinner?" The teacher quirked an eyebrow. "Well, it's just Mike Sensei told me that you've been eating more at school since I brought you lunch, and I want to know if you had eaten. Since you work as a pro, you need to have a healthy eating schedule. And you're also my teacher, and I am going to stop talking now." He blushed as he looked down at the cup before handing it to Aizawa. "No, I haven't." Izuku looked up shocked before glaring slightly at the teacher. "Fine, I'll take a muffin." Izuku smiled and got one for his teacher and handed it to him. Aizawa was about to pull out his wallet when Izuku stopped him. "Nope, I'll cover it." Izuku pulled out his own and took out the money and put it in the cash register. Aizawa glared at him. "You're such a problem child." He sighed out before leaving. Izuku smiled before beginning to close up the shop. Since Izuku was the only student in his class, it made things a little easy, but also complicated, especially when it came to group activities. "Get suited up and head outside," Aizawa commanded as soon as Izuku walked in. He tossed the teen a suitcase before walking out. Izuku looked at it weirdly before realizing it must have been his hero costume. He walked to the changing rooms and opened up the case. Inside was tight black athletic tank top, a black leather jacket with a white hood, fingerless white gloves, a white metal mask, black cargo pants, white combat boots with black metal soles, a black belt with white pockets on it, 2 guns, white thigh holsters as screamer rods, and a pile of cloth. He picked it up and examined it before realizing it was 2 of Aizawa's capture weapons. He geeked out for a moment before trying to realize where they were supposed to go. He saw a note in the case and read it. "Dear Midoriya, the capture weapons given to you are meant to be wrapped around your arms. Good luck. Nedzu and Power Loader." He was shocked to see Nedzu on it, but chose to ignore it. Getting dressed, he looked in the side mirror and smiled. He also noticed that the computer on his arm was pretty well hidden, and you couldn't see the screen unless you were looking directly at it. He might have to add more stuff later. He walked to the front and saw 15, Aizawa, and Midnight standing at the bus. All 3 looked to him as he ran up to them. "Not bad, kid." Izuku smiled, though you could only really tell by his eyes since he had the mask on. 13 and Aizawa got on the bus with Izuku and Midnight following. "So Midoriya, are you excited?" Midnight asked, since there wasn't really anyone for Izuku to talk to. "Yeah, I'm not really sure what we're doing, but it probably has something to do with rescue since 13 is here and we're driving somewhere, plus I haven't used or even seen my hero costume till now. Then again, it wouldn't explain why you are here. You're not a rescue hero, not that I don't think you're an amazing hero. You really are, but you tend to deal with more strict situations because of your quirk, but you could be used as a villain maybe. It would be Dash." He slowly got quieter as he began to mumble. This shocked Midnight a little. "He's fine, just does that sometimes," Aizawa reassured, making her laugh a little. "I don't think I've ever seen him talk this much. Usually pretty quiet in my class." Izuku seemed to snap out of it and slammed a hand over his mouth. "Sorry, didn't mean to start doing that." He was blushing lightly, but he was nervous. Last time he had mumbled in school, it didn't go well. "No worries, problem child." Izuku nodded. "Did you do the homework I assigned you?" Izuku moved his hand and nodded. "You wanted me to analyze that wind hero, right?" Izuku asked, trying to remember everything he wrote down while Aizawa nodded. "I'll have to catalog all my analysis into the computer. That way I can have it on hand if I need it. He mumbled absent-mindedly, touching where the computer was, but the hero dash. It wasn't long till they made it to a large dome building. Getting off the bus, 13 started to explain everything to Izuku. This is the unexpected simulation joint, they announced as they all walked in. Izuku was practically bouncing on his feet in excitement. Here you'll be tested, and work on your rescuing as a hero. Okay, now he was bouncing. A few ground stuff first. While we're doing this, don't be afraid to ask for help if you're lost or in danger. Izuku nodded his head along. Be careful and think of yourself first. And finally, have fun and learn. Izuku clapped at the end, while 13 bowed. 13-sensei. They looked to him. Can I ask you more about your quirk? Of course. What do you want to know? While those two were talking, Aizawa and Midnight walked around the place a little. How well do you think your kid's gonna do? Midnight asked, looking around some of the areas. He'll do fine. He knows what to do and what not to. Aizawa stated simply, though Midnight had a smirk on her face. You admit he's your kid then? Aizawa glared at her, making her laugh even more. It was finally time for their exercises to start, and Izuku was still bouncing in excitement. For the first one, we'll do a few simple things like first aid. We'll teach you signs for certain things and go from there. 13 explained. Izuku nodded his head. This would be easy for him. He did a lot of research on injuries and things to do to fix them. He even knew how to help if he got shot in the eye with a RBB bullet. Okay, Aizawa on the ground. Aizawa groaned as he laid down. Now be in pain. 13 commanded. Aizawa rolled his eyes. Ow, it hurts, ouch. Izuku was trying not to laugh since Aizawa wasn't very convincing, but 13 went with it. Okay, now do what you think is right, and we'll help you along the way. Izuku nodded and walked over to Aizawa before crouching down. Hi, can you tell me what happened? Izuku asked, pulling down his mask. He heard can calm down people in an accident if they know what you look like. I was told to lay on the ground. Izuku almost burst out laughing at that, making Aizawa smile slightly before 13 glared at him. I mean, I was in a car crash. Izuku collected himself and became serious again. Okay, can you tell me where you feel the most pain? Aizawa had to think about it for a second. My chest, leg, and head. Izuku reached into one of his pockets and pulled out a small flashlight and waved it in Aizawa's eyes. He stopped for a minute before turning to 13 and Midnight. For the head injury, Aizawa-sensei's pupils and everything will react normally, but I don't know if he actually does have something wrong since nothing will be out of the norm. That seemed to shock all three teachers. And how do you know that? 13 asked, a little intrigued. Oh, well, I have a lot of free time, so I tend to do a lot of research on stuff that I think can help me be a hero. Plus, my mom's a nurse. The three teachers were a little shocked because most kids use their free time to hang out with friends. Okay. Well, if everything is reacting normally, then what do you think the pain would be? Izuku thought about it for a moment. Possibly a small concussion or headache, though I would still prefer to get the person to a hospital as soon as possible, just in case. 13 nodded, and he continued looking over Aizawa for other injuries. You said your chest, right? Is it hard to breathe? Izuku asked with a hand on the man's chest to measure his breathing. It did seem a little labored, actually. Yes, there's pressure on my lungs. Izuku glared a little and leaned down, actually listening to his breathing. He leaned back up and looked to his teacher. Aizawa-sensei, are you actually injured? Because your breathing is a little slow and rough sounding, and you flinch a little when breathing. Aizawa seemed shocked that he had noticed. I may have been kicked in the chest and sent into a wall. All three of them glared at Aizawa, though Midnight looked closer to laughing. Sensei, you can't do that. He checked the others' breathing again and put a little pressure in places. Seeing Aizawa wince a couple times, you have a few bruised ribs, but nothing's broken. You need to take care of yourself more. Izuku scolded. Now he thought the teacher might have a small concussion. I'm a pro. I can't dash. Izuku cut him off. Nope. No excuses. You might have a concussion too. Izuku checked his eyes again, and it did seem like it. Izuku glared at his teacher. You do. Did you get hurt anywhere else? Normally 13 and Midnight would be helping, but Midnight was having too much fun recording it and 13 watching. My shoulder and left leg. Izuku nodded, checking those parts. Okay, looks like you have a few pulled and strained muscles, but nothing too serious. Aizawa nodded, but why didn't you go see Recovery Girl? You could be seriously hurt. I'm an amateur, you know. Aizawa was about to speak before Izuku stopped him. You know you aren't a very good role model. What would you do if I got badly hurt, but didn't go see Recovery Girl? Izuku put his hands on his hips. I would scold you. Exactly. The USJ trip had been cut short since it just turned into Izuku lecturing Aizawa about health and safety, though he did learn a little more about first aid. He was at the cafe again, though, since he had a break from the gym. Mayumi was out getting more items they needed, but the place wasn't that busy. A few people scattered around on their phones or working on schoolwork. He was giving people refills when one of the students there stopped him. Sorry if this is a little strange, but we were wondering if you knew how to do this. A girl with a black ponytail asked. She was sitting at a table with a girl who had short purple hair and earphone jacks hanging from her ears. Izuku looked down at what they were doing. Oh, it's okay. He looked at the girl's work first. Okay, you just messed up a little here. You need to make that a plus, and SWCH those numbers is all. Both looked and realized the mistake. OCRP. I have to go back and redo my work. The girl with purple hair groaned. Izuku felt a little bad. Well, if you want, you can come sit at the counter. I could try and help more. Both girls seemed shocked, but excited. Are you sure? We don't want to bother you while you're working. The girl with the ponytail asked. Don't worry. This place doesn't get that busy. Plus, Mayumi should be back soon. The girls nodded and moved their stuff to the counter, while Izuku cleaned a few tables. When he went back to the counter, they introduced themselves. I'm Yairoza Momo, by the way. Jiro Kyoka. Izuku smiled and shook his hand with Momo, who offered it. Midoriya Izuku at your service. Izuku was more than happy to help the two girls out with their work. He told them to come again if they ever need help with anything, since he didn't mind the extra company. He had another late shift that night and had seen his teacher again. Aizawa-sensei, you should really take a break so your injuries can heal properly if you aren't going to go see Recovery Girl. Izuku scolded, handing the man a coffee and muffin. I already saw a Recovery Girl to heal. I'll try to be more careful. Izuku smiled and nodded his head. Good. Once the teacher left, Izuku began closing up. Not many things were left to clean since Izuku did that a lot when it wasn't busy. Once everything was cleaned, he closed up and started the walk back to his house. He stopped at an alley, though, when he saw something. Pausing, he looked down, trying to spot something. There was a crash and an animal running out that made him jump a little, but it felt like something was still there. He walked down it, having his hands clenched in case he had to fight. He was near the end when he heard a groan. He turned quickly and saw someone slumped against the wall. Oh my God! Izuku quickly ran over and crouched in front of the person while he shouldered his bag off. He looked at the person closely, moving their head with his hands a little to check for a pulse. It was there, and even the breathing seemed a little labored, but nothing too bad. He saw they had a few scratches and bruises along with a large cut near their hairline. Looking a little closer, he also saw they had a bad shoulder injury. CRP, they need the hospital. He moved his hand away from their face, but a hand stopped him. He jumped a little, seeing that they grabbed his arm and yanked a little. No, hospital. He scrunched his eyebrows and crouched. You're injured. You need help. The hand on his wrist tightened and even seemed to burn a little. The person's eyes opened more. No, hospital. He stared at them before sighing. He crouched down and looked them over a little more. It wasn't life-threatening or anything luxury. Fine. They let go of him. While they seemed half lucid, it was obvious they wouldn't be able to walk. I'm going to regret this. He grabbed onto their arm before turning and pulling them onto his back. They were a little heavy, but not too much, so it wasn't as difficult. What are you doing? They asked through slurred words. Izuku rolled his eyes. They seemed just as stubborn as Aizawa. I'm taking you to my place, so you can get help. He felt the other start a shift, or I can leave you to bleed out. The shifting stopped. Okay, want to tell me your name? Dobby. Izuku knew it was a fake name, which meant the guy didn't trust him. Midoriya Izuku at your service, and we're here. He opened the door and carefully lowered Dobby onto the couch, making sure not to aggravate any wounds. Izuku looked around the house for a second. Okay, my mom and brother are asleep right now, but mom should be getting up in a couple hours. Dobby started to get up, but grunted, "Oh, no, you don't. Where do you think you're going?" Said your mom might be getting up soon. Izuku just glared as he made the others sit back down. So, you're injured. Besides, she's a nurse. She probably won't notice. There was creaking getting both of their attention to see Shinso walking out the hall. Izuku, what are you dash? He looked to Dobby, who seemed ready to run, before sighing. I'll get the medical stuff. Thanks, Toshi. He called back as the other went back down the hall. Dobby looked between the hall and Izuku. He seemed pretty relaxed for having a stranger bleeding out on his couch. Izuku laughed a little while sitting down. It's kind of how he got here. Izuku didn't explain further as Shinso came back with the supplies. He sat next to Dobby and just scrolled on his phone while Izuku wrapped and treated the wounds until he got to the shoulder. This is going to hurt. Izuku put one hand against the shoulder near the wound and used the other to grab the disinfectant while putting the cloth between his teeth. Sorry. Izuku whispered before pouring it on Dobby's shoulder. The other gritted his teeth and grabbed Izuku's wrist again. Sorry. He stopped and took the cloth, putting pressure on the wound. Grabbing the thread, he quickly sewed it up. Though it was a little messy, it was as good as it was going to get. Okay, should be good. Now, Dobby finally let go of Izuku's wrist. He knew it was in a bruise and could tell it was first, close to second-degree burns. He wrapped the injury just in case before looking at his own. I'll be right back. Toshi makes sure he doesn't move. Shinso hummed as Izuku walked away. So what's your deal? Shinso asked, looking at Dobby. Dobby quirked an eyebrow. The hell you mean? What's your deal? Shinso smirked. Well, Izuku has a tendency to pick up strays, but none this messed up. Dobby rolled his eyes. Oh yeah. Well, what about you then? Shinso shrugged his shoulders. Abusive foster homes. He kidnapped me one night, and now I live with him. Dobby was a little shocked at the answer. He sighed, leaning back. Found me bleeding out in an alley after a fight. Shinso just nodded. Sounds fun. Izuku came back with gauze wrapped around his wrist. Either of you hungry or thirsty? Izuku asked while walking into the kitchen. I'll take a water and sandwich. Shinso looked to Dobby, expecting an answer. Same thing. Izuku looked at him for a minute. Okay. Soon it was almost 4 in the morning, and the three of them were all eating and drinking, but Dobby was just shocked and confused at how relaxed they seemed around him, even though they didn't know who he was. So do you just kidnap people for fun? Izuku and Shinso almost spit out what was in their mouths, though Izuku's was out of shock while Shinso was trying not to laugh. What? He said you kidnapped him, and you kidnapped me. Izuku turned to Shinso, who was still trying not to laugh. You told him that I kidnapped you. Shinso nodded while trying to breathe now. First of all, I didn't. You called me. Second of all, you can leave. Dobby almost stood up as soon as you're healed up. I could be a criminal, you know. Some villain with a body count. Izuku looked at him with a smirk. Are you? Dobby shook his head. Then I don't need to worry. Dobby didn't get why this guy was so trusting, and it was kind of worrying him now. Shinso sat up and turned the TV on before settling on a documentary channel. But I'm a guy covered in scars, bleeding out in an alley. Shinso groaned and rolled his head back. How long are you going to ask the same question? Dobby just shrugged his shoulders. He doesn't know, until something makes sense. Are you dangerous? Izuku asked. I could kill you. So could a hero. So could water. So could a very determined goose. You're not special. Shinso joked at the end, making Izuku laugh a little. Fine, I'll shut up. It wasn't long before they heard an alarm go off and someone upstairs start to move around. Mom's awake, Shinso kindly pointed out. CRP, what time is it? Izuku stood up and saw it was a little after 6. I gotta get ready. You two, Toshi, and take a nap or something after school. Dobby watched the two get up. And what about you, mister? I need a full schedule. Izuku playfully shoved him. I don't have work today, so I'll be at the gym. Dobby wasn't sure what to do. The two had left, and he felt like if he left the house, then Izuku would somehow track him down. There were footsteps, and Inko walked out before stopping and staring at Dobby. Well, hello. Izuku and Hitoshi didn't tell me we had a quest. He wasn't really sure how to respond. I'm Inko, by the way. Their mother. Nice to meet you. Dobby. Nice to meet you, Dobby, but I have to go soon. Have a good day, boys. She called, grabbing her keys and a jacket. Bye, Mom. Love you, Mom. The two called back. Soon the two came back down. It was almost 7. Izuku was wearing jeans, a black shirt, his sports jacket, and had his hair tied up while Shinso was in his uniform. The two sat back down for a minute. So, Dobby, I usually walk Toshi and the others to school before coming back here and changing. You want to come with or stay here? Dobby didn't feel comfortable staying in a stranger's house exactly. I guess I'll come. Who are the others, though? Izuku didn't get to answer as banging was heard from the door. Oi, Deku, eye bags. Let's go. Dobby just stared at the door. That's Kakin. Well, Bakugu, don't worry, he's nice. The three stood up, though Dobby was a little slower since he was a little sore. Still, who the F is that? Katsuki asked as soon as they opened the door. This is Dobby. Katsuki just looked him up and down. Whatever, we gotta get shitty hair in the extras. Shinso and Katsuki mostly talked to each other while Izuku and Dobby walked behind them. Dobby was sort of trying to figure out why they were all just okay with him being there. This absolute stranger that didn't give a real name, hadn't done anything for them, covered in ugly scars, and bleed on their couch. You're wondering why we're all okay with this, right? Izuku asked, eyes not leaving the two in front of them as they kept talking. Yeah. To be honest, I don't really know. You look like you needed help and I could give it to you. Doesn't matter what you look like, who you are, or what your quirk is, or if you even have one. Dobby paused for a second and looked at Izuku. You're quirkless. Izuku nodded as they kept walking with Dobby, needing to catch up for a second. It was silent for a second, but Izuku could tell Dobby didn't mind. Bakugu, Senpai, Shinso, a group of 4 jumped out and tackled Katsuki while they waved to the others. Kirishima stood up while the other 3 kept bothering Katsuki and Shinso. Whoa! Dobby flinched back a little, expecting them to say something about the scars. You look so cool. I'm Kirishima, Ijiro. Nice to meet you. Dobby was shocked once again by the group. I'm Kaminari Denki. Who are you, gorgeous? Dobby just stared at him while Shinso smacked him upside the head. Stop being stupid. Sorry about him. He's like that with everyone. Izuku waved his hand dismissively. I'm Siro. Mina. He nodded at the 2. Dobby. The 4 looked at him with stars in their eyes. That's so cool. I wish I had a cool name. Bro, that's manly. They had walked the group to school and were walking back to the house in comfortable silence until someone broke it. Is that Midoriya? Izuku flinched at the voice, and Dobby took notice quickly and stepped closer to Izuku on instinct. Izuku tried to walk a little faster, but was stopped when a hand grabbed him. Midoriya, it is you. Izuku was forced to turn around, and Dobby followed. Though he looked more angry than anything, how have you been? Izuku knew they weren't really asking. Dobby could almost see the anxiety rolling off of Izuku. Whatever. I'm not really asking. After all, no one cares about a freak like you. Dobby stepped between them and glared. How about backing off? He growled. Izuku was shocked at the action. Who the hell are you? Dobby stepped closer, and Izuku could see slight flames on his face. Your worst F nightmare. The other teen looked scared shitless. Now, go. The teen quickly turned and ran. Izuku stood there in shock as Dobby turned back around. What? That was so cool. Oh my gosh. You just stared at him and he ran. Is this what the others feel like? He mumbled out the end, making Dobby confused. Okay. Well, don't you have school? Izuku looked at the time. He still had a good 30 minutes. OCRP, yeah. We gotta head back. Izuku was walking to the school with Dobby on a phone he had remade from scratch. You remade this phone? Izuku chuckled a little. Yep. It was difficult, but I set it up so it contacts only people with a specific app sort of thing. He heard a hum over the phone. It was a little difficult, but it works so. And if you need anything, just text. It should show up on the screen for my costume. Right? And I'm stuck here till... Oh, if you want to meet me near UA, once school gets out around 3, I have to get the others too. Then we go to a gym Kirishima's mom's work at. Normally I also have work, but I got today off. Kid was right. You do have a busy schedule. Dobby chuckled over the other end. Haha. But really you're free to come to the school and text me. Heard you the first time, Midoriya. I'll make sure to keep you updated. Okay, I gotta go. See y'all later, Dobby. Izuku hung up and walked into the classroom, seeing Aizawa looking at papers. Good morning, Aizawa-sensei. He waved with his left hand, forgetting it had the wrapping on it. Morning me dash. Aizawa stopped looking at Izuku's hand. What happened to your hand? Izuku jumped a little and hit it. Oh, I burned it while cooking last night after I got home. Toshi was still awake and was hungry. He explained a little quickly. Aizawa looked from him to the bandaged hand. As long as it doesn't affect you during training. Izuku nodded as he sat down and pulled out his notebooks. Dobby, how do ovens work? Midoriya, what are you doing? Dobby, never mind, figure it out, Midoriya. Dobby, are any of you allergic to anything Midoriya know? Aizawa was now curious as to why at random points Izuku would pull out his phone and answer a text. He wasn't angry since it wasn't interrupting anything, but with that and the bandages he was curious about it, and worried, but he would never admit that. He was in the teacher's lounge, just staring at his hands. Asho, what are you doing? Present Mike asked, looking worriedly at his husband. Aizawa sighed. This morning Midoriya came in with his hand bandaged and kept checking his phone. Midnight started laughing. Of course you noticed something like that. Midnight doubled over laughing. Aizawa-sensei. Lunch rush, said Dash. Izuku stopped and looked at his phone. What? Anyway, lunch rush said you haven't gotten food yet. Izuku handed him his tray like normal. Thank you, Midoriya. No problem, sensei. He walked out and left. Now that Aizawa thought about it, he didn't know where the younger went to lunch either. Oh wow, you're right. Didn't think he actually did that. Present Mike said. Exactly. Once school let out, Izuku was surprised to see Dobby at the gate. You actually came. Dobby smiled a little. Yeah, well, it's a little weird sitting in your house. What were the questions about from earlier? Dobby just shrugged. I have no idea what you're talking about. What? Dobby, don't be like that. Who's that with Midoriya? Midnight asked, looking out the window. That immediately got Aizawa's attention. He walked over to the window to see Izuku talking with someone likely around 18 or 19 with black hair and a few scars showing. I don't recognize him. Aizawa pointed out, though that made Midnight laugh while Present Mike just gasped. You don't know your own kid's friends. What kind of father are you? Aizawa rolled his eyes. For the last time, I'm not his dad. Midnight gaspies this time. What if it's his boyfriend? Present Mike joined in this time. Really? You think Midoriya has a bad boy type? Can we please not talk about the types my student is into? Aizawa hit both of them. Come on, tell me. Izuku begged Dobby, making him smirk. Nope, you'll find out later. Izuku groaned as they finally arrived at the kids' school and waited for them. You're still here. Mina jumped out and attached herself onto Dobby's arm, making him jump at first but calm down once he realized who it was. Oh my god, you're so warm. She let go, starting to mess with the others again. Seems like they warmed up to you. Izuku teased and nudged him a little. Yeah, I guess. They made it to the gym and most of them were working out. Well, everyone except Siro, Kaminari, Shinso, and Dobby. Izuku was using a punching bag with Haku holding it, Katsuki and Kirishima sparring, and Mina doing some stretches. Dobby was just watching them before he noticed something and stood up. Your stance is off. He pointed out to Katsuki. Huh. He walked over and kicked the other's foot a little before making him square his shoulders. There, now try it. Katsuki rolled his eyes, but threw another punch at Kirishima. It seemed a little more powerful than before. Oh, hell yeah. Dobby walked back over and leaned against the wall. I don't believe we've met yet. He jumped, not noticing someone there. My name's Sakura, Kirishima. Dobby. Sakura nodded. I assume you know Midoriya then. Do you have any previous training? That mistake was hard for any of us to notice. Dobby wasn't sure how to answer that since he did. Yeah, a little. Sakura nodded. How would you like a job? Dobby almost fell into shock and turned to her. Well, you're obviously well-trained if you noticed that, and we could always use a little more help around here. Plus, if you're friend with Midoriya, then you're also accepting. Dobby was still in shock. Yumak. Sakura smiled. Fantastic, you start tomorrow. She walked away to her wife who had finished helping Izuku. What the F just happened? Izuku was dying of laughter while Dobby rolled his eyes. Yeah, laugh it up, it's so funny. He calmed down and took a few breaths. Seriously, she just offered it to you. Dobby nodded his head. Yeah, really weird, but why did we leave the kid? He asked, remembering Shinso wasn't with them. Oh, he's going to study at Kaken's house with the others. He'll be back later. Izuku explained, waving his hand dismissively. Okay. Izuku opened the door to the house. I also made dinner. His eyes widened as they made it to the kitchen. Holy CRP. There was a large arrangement of food. Dobby, you made this. Dobby rubbed his neck a little awkwardly. A Yemi mom taught me a little when I was younger and you helped me soya no. Izuku laughed a little before hugging the other, who was shocked and just stood there. Thanks. You really didn't have to. Yeah, well, whatever. The two sat down and started eating. A few hours later, Shinso joined them and reacted similarly to Izuku. Okay, so we have a guest room that you can use, that way you aren't sleeping on the couch. Izuku guided him to the room. It was a pretty plain room minus what looked like a few hand-sewn blankets. Thanks, you really didn't have to do this, you know. Izuku waved his hand a little. Nonsense. You needed help, so I helped you. Now get some sleep, you're probably tired. Izuku walked out of the room, leaving Dobby to sit silently on the bed. He looked around a little while feeling the soft blanket in his hand before falling back onto the bed and staring at the ceiling. Where are you going? Tuya turned to his sister. I can't have deal with this anymore, Fuyumi. He's put all of us through hell. For what? Some stupid dream. He squeezed his eyes shut and sighed, turning onto his side. Maybe they'll believe me. Izuku woke up the next morning and started getting ready right away. He was supposed to work with Aizawa more on how to use his capture weapons correctly without getting tangled. He walked out into the hall, making sure to wake up Shinso. He looked in Dobby's room and saw the other asleep on top of the sheets, looking almost in pain. He scrunched his eyebrows and walked closer. He sat on the edge of the bed and heard Dobby mumbling something in his sleep. He didn't want to wake the other, since he looked like he needed sleep, but it also looked painful. He knew when him or Shinso had nightmares that it was better to wake up than stay in it. He also knew that Dobby might accidentally burn him again. Dobby, he placed a hand on the other's shoulder. Wake up. It's just a Dre dash. Almost like lightning, he shot up and grabbed Izuku's wrist with his quirk activated. It was the same wrist as before, so luckily it burned the bandages before him. Dobby. The other let go and seemed to snap out of it. Oh, F. SHD, I'm so sorry. FFF. Izuku smiled a little. It's okay. Just a small burn. Dobby didn't seem to believe him, since Izuku was now hiding his hand. I'm going to get ready for school. You could go back to sleep. Izuku quickly left and went to the bathroom, pulling out his first aid kit from middle school, and started patching it up. Once he was done, he walked back to his room and changed into his usual morning clothes before going to the living room and seeing Shinso and Dobby already sitting on the couch. Rock and roll, Bucharest. Let's go. Shinso groaned. You're grounded from Hero 2. Izuku gasped playfully. You can't ground me. I'm your older brother. Izuku saw Dobby at least smile, so that was a plus. Izuku made it to class on time with Aizawa laying in his sleeping bag on the floor. He figured the other was asleep and made his steps silent while he unpacked and mumbled quietly. I wonder if I should look into a vehicle. It would have to fit a few people if I wanted to bring the kids, but a van wouldn't be very nice. He pulled out a notebook and started writing down ideas. Maybe something like a Jeep. Or I could go for something small like a skateboard. Maybe I could add stuff to it and make it faster or something. He started sketching out the idea. A longboard with a few added mods. Maybe something that can make it like a scooter. Or a bike. He tried to think of how he could do that. If I use a bendable metal, it could work. Maybe I can make it attached to my shoes. Like skates. What are you doing, problem child? Aizawa asked, now standing up. Izuku jumped and laughed a little awkwardly. Well, I was thinking about something for transport. So for normal stuff, maybe like a Jeep. But then I started thinking smaller, like a skateboard, but if I mowed it, I could make it like an attachment. Maybe even make them skates too. Aizawa looked at the blueprint. Fine, show it to Power Loader later. Aizawa's eyes drifted to his bandaged hand. Seeing more there than before, did you burn yourself again? Izuku looked down to his hand. Oh, yeah, I need to be more careful. Aizawa just hummed. Right, well come on, we got work to do. Izuku's burn irritated him a little, one, because any time Dobby saw it he would frown and be upset, two, Aizawa seemed to be hyper-focused on it and not believe Izuku when he said it was from cooking, and three, because his capture weapons rubbed on it weirdly. It didn't hurt any, but it wasn't fun either. He grabbed his lunch, and a one-lunch rush made for Izawa like always, and headed to the teacher's lounge. He pushed the door open with his foot and sighed. Izawa-sensei, you dash. He paused, not seeing his teacher, present Mike-sensei. Where's Izawa-sensei? The other looked up. He didn't tell you. Izuku shook his head and set the food down. He said he had a meeting with Nedzu. Should be back later, though. Izuku frowned a little. Oh, okay, Power Loader Sensei. Can you look a quick sketch? Sure thing, Midoriya. Hand it over. I don't know Nedzu. Something's up with him. Nedzu nodded his head. I definitely think something's going on, but I don't believe he's in danger. He would come to us if something was truly wrong, more specifically you. Izawa rolled his eyes. Why does everyone keep pointing that out? I barely know anything about the kid. Then learn something about him. What? Nedzu pulled out a few papers and organized them. Why don't you learn more? I'm sure if you asked he would tell you, or you could look at his file from his other schools. Izawa stared at him for a minute before offering his hand. Nedzu placed the papers there with a smile. Fine. Midoriya, Izawa called as Izuku walked into the classroom. What was your middle school like? Izuku was caught off guard, and a flash of fear flickered in his eyes. What meet Wasakui, do you ask? His arms went closer to his chest, almost defensively. I was looking over your old files, and some of the information doesn't line up. Izuku nodded slowly, and was already looking at the ground. It says here you were a distraction in class. Tried to start fights, bothered other kids, and didn't listen to teachers. Izuku felt like crying now. Do you mind telling me what really happened? I don't know, I'm sorry, I'll try to be better. Izawa's eyes widened. No, Midoriya, just tell me what happened. Izuku mumbled something, but Izawa couldn't hear what. W, why do you even care? Just look in that stupid file. Izawa was shocked at the outburst, though Izuku seemed just as surprised as he gasped. I'm sorry. I need to leave. Izawa stopped him. Midoriya calmed down. Izuku stopped moving for a moment. Tell me what's wrong. I'm not angry, okay. Izuku looked up a little, and Izawa could already see the tears. Are you sure? Izawa let a breath out and smiled a little. Promise. Now tell me what happened. The two sat down at Izuku's desk. It started when I was told I was quirkless. EW, stay away from me. Izuku let tears run down his face as the other students ran away from him. Quirkless freak. Loser. No wonder he has no friends. He's always mumbling. It's creepy. And it got so much worse. He let out a wet laugh. I even protected other kids from bullies, but they bullied me too. No one really cared. No teachers stopped it or anything. Then when I got into middle school, Izuku walked into class with his head down, avoiding everyone's eyes. He knew if he looked at them, they might beat him up or something, and it was getting harder to hide it. He walked to his desk and paused. He saw new writing on his desk. He gave up trying to clean it a while ago. It was full of the usual freak, loser, and kill yourself. He sighed, though, when he saw the flowers on his desk, spider lilies. He heard his classmates snicker and start to whisper behind their hands as he moved the flowers to his bag where he kept them in a book. It turns out it was easier to keep them than throw them out. If I didn't keep them, it meant everything would be worse. He set his head down on one of his arms while the other laid there on the desk. During class, they would throw things, insult me, or use their quirk on me. And the teachers did nothing. Izawa listened as Izuku continued talking about what happened to him. And Izawa doesn't think he's ever felt so mad in his entire life. He wanted to kill whoever told Izuku those things and destroy the school itself. What kind of hero can't even stand up to their bullies? Izawa snapped out of the murder thoughts and looked at Izuku confused. I protected Toshi, Kirishima, and the others multiple times from people, but I couldn't even help myself. He still didn't meet Izawa's eyes as he cried harder. Kid, it's okay. Izawa put his hand in Izuku's hair to try and calm him down. I was bullied when I was younger too. Izuku's head perked up and he looked shocked. What? Yeah. People thought I was evil or had a villain's quirk, so I didn't have any friends really. Izuku just stared at him shocked, so it's okay. I didn't stand up for myself either. Izawa wasn't expecting anything, so when Izuku suddenly tackled him into a hug, he was confused before he hugged the other back. Izawa burst into the teacher's lounge and glared at all of them. If anything were to happen to Midoriya, I would kill everyone in this room, and then myself. He then walked out and slammed the door, leaving all the teachers confused while Present Mike and Midnight died laughing. Okay, if I do this then, Izuku tapped the top of his right foot on the ground once. When he did that, a metal skateboard appeared attached to both of his shoes, yes. He disconnected his left foot to push off and start skating around. He was a little wobbly, but it worked. He tapped his foot again, making the board disappear. If that works, then so should this. He tapped his foot on the ground twice, making his shoes turn to rollerblades. He skated around on these a little better. Okay, one more test. He made the wheels disappear before tapping his foot 3 times. Blades appeared on the bottom, and he squealed while jumping up and down. Oh my God. Knife shoes. He made them disappear before he started messing with them more. Midoriya, where you dash? Power Loader rushed in to see Izuku skating around on his rollerblades while freaking out. Oh, you did it, good job. Izuku smiled wide and nodded. I know, right? This is so cool. He shifted to the skateboard again and detached both feet so that he could hold it before putting it back on his feet. Can I show Aizawa-sensei? Izuku asked excitedly. Power Loader only nodded as Izuku rushed out of the classroom. He ran to the teacher's lounge and burst through the door, scaring everyone except for Aizawa, who already knew who it was. Aizawa-sensei! Aizawa-sensei! Look what I made! Aizawa looked down and listened as Izuku explained his shoe attachments excitedly. Sounds good, kid. Nice job. He patted Izuku on the head, who smiled even wider. Thanks to AA Day. Have a nice day. I have to go. Izuku then sprinted out of the room, leaving a stunned Aizawa and a laughing Midnight and Present Mike. Izuku made it back to the empty classroom and slammed the door before sinking to the floor. I can't believe I almost did that. Ugh. Stupid, stupid. He groaned before standing up and walking around a little. Okay. Doubt he noticed it. He looked at his phone and saw it was the end of the day. I'm sure he'll forget it by tomorrow, right? Right? He grabbed his stuff and raced out of the school, heading towards where the others were. He knew Dobby wouldn't be there since he was supposed to be starting work at the dojo today. He almost called you Dad. Midnight cried out while laughing. Aizawa was still a little shocked, but soon snapped out of it and glared at the papers in his hands. Shut up. Aizawa silently hoped that Izuku wouldn't be angry with him later. Izuku was sitting in the living room with Dobby and Shinso next to him. At the moment, Shinso was beating Dobby in a racing game while it rained heavily outside. F you purple rat. Izuku was trying not to laugh as they threw insults at each other. Why don't you try sucking less, you burnt beach? Now boys, play nice. Izuku smiled and waved at Inko, who had just walked in. Hi, Mom. How was work? Inko set her things down. It was good. Izuku nodded. Izuku, can you come into the kitchen? Izuku and Shinso's eyes widened. He stood up from the couch and followed after her. Yes, sure. Shinso watched them walk into the kitchen while Dobby passed him in the race. What's up with that? Dobby asked, realizing that Shinso wasn't paying attention. They only go into the kitchen if it's serious. They both looked to the doorway now, though they couldn't hear them. Wonder what happened. Dobby nodded his head as the two stood up and walked to the entrance and stayed silent while they listened. Mom, is everything okay? Izuku asked, his hand on the counter as he tried to get a read on his mom's mood. She didn't seem angry, but it had gotten harder to read his mom over the years. Izuku, are you okay? His eyes widened, though he quickly hid it and laughed a little. Of course, Mom. Why wouldn't I be? She finally turned around, and he saw unshed tears in her eyes. Mom. She sighed and whipped her eyes. Izuku, were you being told to kill yourself at school? Izuku stood there frozen. Please tell me it didn't happen, and not that I wasn't a good enough mom. He snapped out of it and walked towards his mom. Mom, you're not Dash. Tell me, Izuku. He flinched back at the loud voice, hoping she didn't see it, but she did. Oh my God. He looked down at the ground before looking back at her. Mom, it's not Dash. She cut him off again. Izuku, you just flinched at me. Your teacher told me everything that happened. Izuku paused and looked at her. What? You were being bullied every day, being beaten up, told to go jump off a roof, and you never told me. Do you not trust me? Izuku felt his own tears stream down his face. That's not what happened. Your own teachers were against you. Izuku, I'm supposed to be there for you to stop this from happening. Stop. When he shouted that, it was like everything froze. This is why I didn't tell you. You would blame yourself when it wasn't you, Mom. He took a few breaths. It was me, okay. It was my own fault. I should have told you, I know, but he stopped talking, though Inko waited for him to continue. I can't do this. He mumbled before turning around and running out of the kitchen. He grabbed his jacket that held his phone, headphones, key, and wallet before running out the front door. Izuku. All three of them yelled as he ran out into the rain. They all stood there shocked before Shinso turned to Inko. Mom, was it true? She still had tears running down her face as she nodded her head. Dobby looked between them before grabbing his own jacket. You stay here and comfort her, okay? I'll go find him. Shinso nodded and went to his mom as Dobby walked out and closed the door. He looked both ways before seeing Izuku turn down a different street. Midoriya. He chased after the other, though he wasn't sure if the other teen had even heard him. At some point, Dobby lost him and was asking people if they had seen him. A few people had, and he was getting pretty far from the house. Excuse me. He tapped on the person's shoulder. Have you seen Dash? He stopped in his tracks and saw the woman's face. She had white hair with bits of red in it. She was wearing glasses and looked a little confused. Yes. Do you need something? He was frozen for a moment before remembering that he had something he needed to do. Yeah. Have you seen someone maybe around my age with green hair running somewhere? Yes, I believe so. I think he went over to the forest. He nodded his head and went that direction before whispering. Thanks for Yumi. He heard her gasp, but didn't stay long enough for her to say anything else. He finally came to where there was a clearing in the woods and looked around a little before hearing the sounds of someone crying. Midoriya. He walked over to where he heard it and saw Izuku sitting at the base of a tree with his legs pulled up to his chest and his headphones in. Dobby sighed and walked up to the other before leaning over him and blocking the rain that came through the trees. Izuku looked up with foggy eyes and confusion. You'll get all wet. Dobby pointed out. Izuku smiled a little sadly at him. So will you. The two looked at each other before Dobby spoke again. What happened? Izuku looked down and away a little. I'm weak. Dobby was a little shocked but kept listening. I can't even defend myself. I almost listened to all those people. Aizawa said it's okay, but it's not. Idiot. Dobby put his other hand in Izuku's hair. You're one of the strongest and kindest people I know, Midoriya. Izuku glared but didn't meet his eyes. Then how come I never fought back? Or told Mom? Dobby crouched down to his level, and they finally met eyes. Dobby could still see the tears streaming down his face. 'Cause you're too nice, you hoped they would be better. You didn't want to bother your mom with something you did think was important. Izuku looked down again. Hell, you picked up some bleeding stranger in an alleyway. Izuku laughed a little at that and nudged his hand a little. Well, the stranger seems pretty nice. Dobby chuckled and sat down next to Izuku. It was silent for a moment before Izuku leaned over and wrapped his arms around Dobby's neck in a hug. Thank you. Dobby was frozen for a moment before wrapping his arms around Izuku's waist. No problem, Midoriya. Izuku laughed a little and pulled away slightly. You know you can call me Izuku, right? I think we're close enough for that now. Dobby looked to the ground before looking back to Izuku. Then you should probably call me by my actual name. Izuku's eyes widened. My name is Tuya Todoroki. My father's the #2 hero. What? You need to keep training, Tuya. I will not allow another failure in this family. Tuya stood up with shaky legs. His arms burned from the blue flames still lit. I want Todo stop. Endeavor turned around with a snarl and looked down at him. What? Tuya looked up with tears streaming down his face and a glare. I said I want to stop. I don't want to be a FF hero. Endeavor walked closer to him and snatched his burnt wrist, making Tuya cry out. You will stop when you surpass me as my greatest creation yet. Tuya growled as Endeavor dragged him away. That's how it always was, Dobby sighed, leaning against the tree as Izuku stared at him. I either surpassed him or he would destroy me. Dobby looked at one of his burnt arms. Guess I did that for him. Izuku placed a hand over Dobby's own as he continued. You can't keep doing this, Senji. He's falling apart. and he doesn't want to do this. Tuya stayed huddled close to the door as his mother shouted for Endeavor to leave him alone. He will be the next #1 hero, Ray. Now, get out of my way. No. It was silent for a moment before there was a loud noise and his mother crying out, "Mom!" Tuya threw the door open and crouched down to his mom, who was cradling an already bruising cheek. "I am okay, Ta." He didn't believe her, but he didn't have much of choice as Endeavor grabbed him again and began dragging him away. For a while it was only Fuyumi, Natsuo, and me, but when Endeavor realized I wouldn't listen to him without putting up a fight, he decided to have another kid, my little brother Shudo. "Don't you lay your hands on him," Tuya shouted while shielding a shaking and crying Shudo. "Step out of the way." Tuya stiffed and glared. "Hell no, I'm not letting you touch him, old man. He's only 5, you psycho." Endeavor seemed to growl before grabbing onto Tuya's wrist again. Tuya yelled before lighting his arm on fire, forcing Endeavor to let go with a hiss. "I told you no." I tried to fight him off at every turn, but he always got to Shudo at some point. Dobby looked down, feeling tears come to his eyes. Izuku still hadn't said anything, but Dobby knew he was listening. "Mom, what do I do?" Tuya asked Ray one day. She seemed shocked by the question, but turned to him with a smile. "You run, my little phoenix." He looked at her shocked. "You run until you can't stop, and you get us help." She caressed his cheek lovingly. "Be our hero." So I did what she said. I just left one night. Fuyumi tried to stop me, but I still left. No explanation other than I was tired of it all. God, I left Shudo there. I left them all, and ran like a coward. Dobby held his hands over his eyes and leaned his head back against the tree. Izuku moved and kneeled in front of Dobby, pulling his hands back a little. "No, you didn't, Dobby. She told you to, and you listened. She wanted you to find help, and you did." Izuku smiled as Dobby looked at him again. "What do you mean?" "Really, Dobby? My mom has seen abuse cases before. We all have. We already knew something was happening." He leaned back on his legs. "And now that we have a name and no people still live there, we can get them out." Dobby looked shocked before he lunged forward and hugged him. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Izuku hugged him back. "Of course. Hitoshi, am I a bad mother?" Shinso's eyes widened, and he held onto Inko's arms. No. Mom, you're great." Izuku he doesn't like to bother people with his problems. She laughed a little at that, and he could always blame any injuries and strange habits on training and stuff, right? So of course he didn't notice, because he didn't want you to. She smiled and hugged Shinso. "Thank you, Hitoshi." She let go and whipped her tears with a little laugh. "And I guess you're right, but I'm signing him up for therapy." Shinso laughed this time. "Probably a good idea." The two sat on the couch and put on a move as they waited for Dobby and Izuku to get back. After maybe an hour, the front door burst open with a frantic Izuku and a panting Dobby. "Mom, we got to get custody of Dobby's siblings." "Well, I guess just Shudo, since the other two are adults. So we can't really do that. We also should probably get Ray better help since she's in a mental hospital. Inko cut him off. "Izuku, honey, slow down and use your words." Izuku looked like he was trying to think of how to word it correctly, giving Dobby the chance to walk up to them. He had a hand on the back of his neck and sighed. "My real name's Tuya Todoroki. Endeavor's abusive. My little brother still lives there. My mom's in a mental hospital after losing it because of the abuse, and I need your help." The two on the couch sat there shocked before Inko seemed to snap out of it. "So, when do we start?" They came up with a plan pretty quickly. Talk to the police, get Dobby to talk about it to a social worker and officer, get proof, which Dobby had a lot of, talk to the other siblings, talk to Ray, and finally get them out of Endeavor's custody. The only issue is that it would take a long time since they didn't want Endeavor finding out. "I'll talk to them this weekend and explain the situation and plan. Then we'll bring you in, okay?" Inko asked Dobby, who was just staring in shock at the thought-out plan. Yeah, that works." Izuku held onto one of his arms and smiled at him. "If you're uncomfortable with doing it alone, we can have someone with you." Dobby nodded and put his face in his hands. "Thank you all so much." Shinso rolled his eyes. "What did you expect? You told the one family who would kill an abuser that the #2 hero was a SHD bag." Dobby laughed a little at that. Guess you're right. Inko clapped her hand together and smiled. Okay, everyone to bed. You all have school and work tomorrow. Izuku and Shinso left after saying goodnight. Though Inko stopped Dobby, if you ever need to talk to me or Izuku or Hitoshi. We'll always listen, okay? You're not alone. Dobby felt like crying after today, and that almost pushed it. He hugged her tight before whispering, "Thank you." Inko patted his back, and when he let go, she smirked. "You're welcome. Now go to bed. I know you're walking with them in the morning, then heading to work. So go. Shoo shoo." He smiled and went to the guest room. Izuku woke up in the middle of the night from a nightmare, remembering being cornered in school and beaten to hell and back. He walked downstairs to the kitchen and grabbed a glass of water. He turned around and jumped when he saw the figure in the doorway. "You scared me, Toshi." He laughed a little, walking over to his little brother. He was about to make another joke when he saw the tears running down his face. "What's wrong?" Luckily, he didn't need to lean down much, since Shinso was close to his height. "W was all of that happening when you protected me." Izuku smiled a little sadly. "Yeah, it's the reason I was covered in bandages all the time." Shinso glared at the ground before punching Izuku in the stomach, making him double over for a moment. "Don't do that again, or I'll kick your butt, okay?" Izuku smiled and hugged his brother. "Promise." The next morning, the three were all running around to get ready while Dobby sat on the couch. He always felt awkward, but since he didn't need to get ready, he just sat around. "Okay, boys, have a good day at school and work. I'll be home later tonight, okay? Bye, Mom. Love you." Inko walked out the door, but not before patting Dobby's head. The other two came down in their usual morning outfits. "Okay, let's head out. You have work in a few, right?" Izuku asked Dobby, who was heading to the door. "Yeah, once you get to school, I'll head over there." Izuku nodded as they all headed off. Aizawa wouldn't admit it, but he was nervous. He had made great progress with Izuku, and it all might be set back with letting his mother know what happened in middle school. When Izuku walked in, Aizawa pretended to be asleep like normal. He honestly expected a glare or something, but when he saw the normal smile on Izuku's face, he was a little less worried. "Aizawa-sensei." Aizawa peeked one eye open. Thank you for telling my mom what happened." Izuku wasn't facing him really, but Aizawa was glad he seemed okay. "Of course, problem child." He stood up and walked over to the teen. "Now come on, we have capture weapon training." Izuku beamed and hugged Aizawa before running off to change into his hero uniform, leaving a smiling Aizawa to follow behind him. "Try again." Izuku threw his arm out, causing the capture weapon to lash out and wrap around the pole. He yanked down, slightly bending the metal before spinning around it. He twisted before letting it go and aiming a kick at Aizawa. It was a little too fast for Aizawa to dodge good. Izuku smirked, pulling out one of his Eskrima rods and sweeping Aizawa's feet out from under him. Aizawa flipped as Izuku switched to his gun and shot around, making Aizawa trip up and fall. Izuku used his capture weapon to wrap his arms to his sides. He dragged Aizawa to him before placing a foot on his chest and aiming the gun slightly off to the side, but making it look like it was aimed near his head. "Better." Izuku smiled before letting Aizawa up. "I want you to work on your style without your weapons. Don't need you relying on them too much." "Oh, are we going to work on hand-to-hand tomorrow then?" Izuku asked excitedly, bouncing on the ball of his feet. "Not exactly. Your last trip to the USJ didn't go as planned." Izuku laughed a little, thinking of the lecture he gave to Aizawa. "So Nedzu suggested we work with the other class. Says it will help you feel like a normal student." Izuku grimaced a little. He had never even talked to any of the other students. He ran into Mirio-senpai, Tamaki-senpai, and Nijiru-senpai a few times, but otherwise never really interacted with the other students. "That sounds interesting." Aizawa sighed, eyed him as they entered the school. Izuku quickly changed back into his uniform before meeting back in the class. "Stay here. I'll be back to give you more work." Izuku nodded as Aizawa left the room. He had been suspicious of the teen they saw the first time Izuku came in with a burn. When he came in with a worse burn, the suspicion only grew. Then he started showing up and waiting for Izuku to get out of work. He noticed that the man got there about 15 or so minutes before school was over. He would stay away from the wall and simply stand under a tree messing with the phone. Walking out the front gate and looking around, he spotted the teen under the tree like normal. As quiet as possible, he snuck around and grappled into the tree. He crouched on one of the branches and watched him before finally speaking. "Who are you?" "Jesus F." The teen fell over and looked at Izawa shocked, trying to get his breathing back to normal. "Well, hello to you too." Izawa glared, using his capture weapon to catch the other and hang him from the tree. "What the hell? Who are you?" The teen stared at him, a little confused before seeming to realize who he was. "Wait, you're Izawa, right? Izuku's teacher." He glared harder at the teen, who didn't seem to react that much. "My name's Dobby." "Why? That's a fake name." "Obviously, but it's what everyone calls me. Why am I hanging from a tree?" Izawa let the weapon slack make him fall to the ground. He dropped down and crossed his arms. "Are you physically harming my student?" Dobby's eyes widened as he stood up, shifting slightly on his feet. "Look, I know you won't believe me, and I really don't see why you should, but it was an accident. I don't know why he doesn't hold it against me or get angry, but he forgives me. I'm really sorry." Izawa didn't show any signs of emotion as the other spoke. It was silent for a while before Izawa sighed. "Midoriya will be out soon." He left the other and walked back into the school, where Izuku had finished packing up and was waiting for him to give the assignments. Izuku was more than nervous. He had, of course, seen some of the other students, but never actually talked to any of them. He walked towards the bus with Midnight and Izawa in his costume. He had his mask up but kept his hood down and his hair tied up. He was messing with his hands a lot and typing away on his screen. "Everything all right, Midoriya? You seem nervous." He jumped a little hearing Midnight. "Oh, yeah, sorry. Just nervous. I don't really talk to or interact with any of the other students." Izawa patted his head as they got closer to the bus, already hearing the noise. "Don't worry about it. Problem child. They're just annoyances." Izuku laughed a little. When Izuku stepped onto the bus, no one except Vlad King seemed to notice. He was glad that he had a habit of somehow blending in and being invisible. He walked to the back of the bus and continued messing with his computer, cataloging and going through the information he had gathered from the other students. "Welcome to the unexpected simulation joint." 13 did the same explanation as the last time Izuku was here. He had assumed the other class hadn't trained here yet. He stayed mostly off to the side, and it seemed like the others still didn't notice him. "Midoriya, what is my number 1 rule?" 13 asked. Everyone seemed to look around, not knowing who he was. "Don't feel afraid to ask for help or ask questions." The class all jumped, seeing him near the back. "When did you get here?" A male with light blue hair, pale skin, and a fish's tail yelled. "He's been here since the bus. Pay more attention." Izawa scolded, glaring at the class. "I think we would have noticed him." A girl with white hair, greenish skin, and sharp claws said smugly while rolling her eyes. "You didn't? We'll be doing more situational awareness training because of it." Vlad King said with a glare towards the class. Some of the students glared at Izuku, who pretended not to notice it. "Okay, we're going to separate you into groups. We'll give you a number, and you'll be partnered with people with the same number and sent with a teacher." 13 explained as Midnight numbered them off. Izuku ended up getting a 3 and walked over to where he saw the others. The 2 from before were also in the group, making him sign. Internally a little, he could tell they weren't going to like him no matter what. "Oh goody, we got paired with the ghost." The girl rolled her eyes and huffed. "Lay off, Naomi." A girl with black hair, dark skin, and red nails said, slightly shoving the other aside. "Nice to meet you. I'm Suzuki." She offered a hand with a large smile. Izuku took the hand and smiled back, though she couldn't see it because of the mask. "Midoriya, if you don't mind me asking, what's your quirk?" She smiled almost evilly before her hair started moving, the ends turning to snake heads and extending, one slithering around her arm. "Snake hair. It's not super strong, but useful, you know." Izuku brightened up and started using one hand to type the information into the computer. "That's so cool. Do you know how far they stretch? Or how much weight they could lift?" Suzuki smiled excitedly. She wore a red bodysuit with black armor covering her vital points, a WHP at her side, and a black eye mask. "Also, are you a fan of Midnight? Your outfits look similar." "I am. She's so cool." and they can stretch for about 30 feet. I can lift your average person with them, but otherwise it starts to hurt. Was your outfit inspired by anyone? Izuku looked at his own and shook his head. No, not really. I wanted an outfit that would let me hide easily, but not scare people. My little brother actually helped me plan it out. She gasped with stars in her eyes. Really? Do you have a picture of him? He pulled out his phone and started showing her pictures of him and the others, explaining who they were and how they all got along. Okay, everyone, I'll be your teacher. Midnight greeted, walking over to them. Izuku nudged Suzuki, who nudged him back. We're going to work over in that building over there. You'll have to get the dummies out of the building before it crashes down, okay? Let's go. The other male looked nervous while the other girl seemed to not care. Izuku was already thinking of plans on the best way to get them out. He didn't notice, but Suzuki was listening closely and adding in her own ideas. It had been going pretty okay so far. The other two didn't waste time and didn't even try to work together. Izuku was a little shocked when Suzuki worked with him. Midnight seemed happy they had been working together. They had also gotten the most people out so far. Would you two stop trying to impress her so much? God, it's annoying. The girl yelled at Izuku and Suzuki when they went back to the ground floor. What are you talking about, Naomi? We've just been doing what we're told. Suzuki defended. She seemed to find out pretty quickly that Izuku didn't like confrontation. As if, you two have been geeking out and annoying this entire time. The guy yelled at the two. Izuku glared and set the dummy down. We shouldn't be arguing. This is a training exercise, but it's still a dangerous area. He could practically feel the ground shifting under him, and he had a bad feeling. Aizawa always told him to trust his instincts. Oh, shut it. Why should we listen to you? The girl yelled, shoving him. Suzuki growled and wrapped one of her snakes around the girl. Don't shove him. The girl slashed at the snake, making it let go. This time a guy shoved Izuku. It was strong enough to get him out of the ground floor and back outside. Guys, we dash. Izuku cut himself off, seeing the pillars crack along the sides. He ran back before using his capture weapons and wrapping it around the pillars. He felt them finally snap as he pulled them taut, get out. He grunted out, feeling the weight pull on his arms and drag him forward a little. The girl seemed to notice and started running to the exit. The guy and Suzuki noticed too late, though, as debris hit them and knocked them to the ground. He shifted his foot and tugged away from the building as hard as he could. He saw that the two still in the building weren't moving. Either they were knocked out or trapped. You. The girl looked at him with anger. I don't care how you feel about me, but they're in danger. Run back in there and get them. Why should I dash? He cut her off with a growl and a shout. Now! She paused in shock before nodding and running back. Using her claws, she cut through a piece of debris that was trapping Suzuki. She stood up and used her snakes to pick the man up before they all got out of the building. Once he knew they were out, he let his capture weapon come back to him and the building to crash to the ground. Midoriya. He fell to his knees, cradling one of his arms as Suzuki and Midnight ran over. Are you okay? Suzuki asked worriedly. He tried to nod his head, but grunted when he pulled his other arm a little. What happened? Midnight crouched next to him and moved his jacket, getting a look at his arms. Both were now starting to bruise and showed signs of rug burn. Both shoulders had slight bruising, but his right was swelling more and looked worse. Let's get you to Recovery Girl. Aizawa seemed to appear out of nowhere and helped Izuku up. Midnight stay with them and figure out what happened. She nodded, already going over to the other two, who looked pissed. Can I come? Please. It's partly my fault he's hurt. I want to make sure he's okay. Aizawa stared at her before sighing. Fine, come on. Izuku smiled at Suzuki, who smiled back and started talking more about her quirk to try and distract him from the pain. You dislocated your right shoulder, pulled your left, you have a small fracture on your wrist, and your arms are bruised and burned from the fabric. Recovery Girl explained as she handed Aizawa the chart. I thought the fabric didn't burn. Aizawa stated he had never had a problem with it before. Normally they don't, but his are on his arms and aren't meant to be used to hold up a building from falling on 3 teenagers. Suzuki ducked a little. I'm really sorry. I would have gotten one of the teachers, but there wasn't time, and if I left dash, Izuku started mumbling as Aizawa sighed. Problem child. He stopped talking and looked at Aizawa. It's not your fault. You did the right thing, We just don't want you doing it again, understand? He nodded his head. Suzuki elbowed him in the side and smiled. Hey, at least you're a hero. You showed those too. Izuku nodded. I guess, what was their problem with me? He was used to some hate, but it was usually when people knew he was quirkless. They don't like being wrong or having to do extra training. Suzuki just shrugged her shoulders a little. None of the class do really. They all think they're too good for it. You showed them we aren't, though. You held up a building. It was crazy. Are you okay, by the way? You got hit with debris, right? She nodded a little and showed a bruised ankle. I already had it looked at, though. Just bruised. Nothing serious. Izuku sighed in relief. You never told me you're quirked, by the way. He flinched a little. That's because I'm quirkless. Suzuki stared at him with wide eyes. You held up a building. He nodded, still looking down in slight fear. Holy SHD. You're so cool. How'd you do that? He jumped, a little shocked at the Amazon in her voice. What do you mean? You're not disgusted or anything. She looked at him a little confused. Why would I be? You just saved my life. You're literally the coolest. He smiled excitedly and started talking about how he knew it would work. Izuku got out of school and exchanged numbers with Suzuki. He was happy to have a friend at school. It also turned out she wasn't well liked in her class either. Recovery Girl had healed his wounds slightly, though she left the bruises and strained to heal on its own, so he would need to wear a shoulder brace for the week and not overwork himself more than he needed to. Holy SHD, are you okay? Dobby asked as soon as he saw Izuku, grabbing his arms and looking them over for any more obvious damage. You sorta. Recovery Girl healed me as much as she could, but suggested letting the bruises and muscles fully heal on their own, so I wasn't too drained. Dobby glared at him a little, but there wasn't any heat behind it. What happened then? You have rug burns on your arms too. Izuku then explained what had happened at the USJ and how he got hurt. I'll burn those assholes alive. They're lucky you're so nice. Izuku blushed a little and laughed. It wasn't that bad. Besides, I won't be seeing them for a while probably. Aizawa-sensei was really angry at them. Good. If they hadn't been so rude, you wouldn't be hurt. Izuku laughed a little, making Dobby smile as they headed to the middle school. Izuku burst into the living room holding piles of old computers, metal, and pieces of glass. What ya got there? Shinso asked, looking up from his phone. A smoothie. Shinso laughed at him as he set everything down on the counter. So, I've been doing some research. The technology for this stuff has existed for a while, but no one uses it. Which is stupid really, but nevertheless. He pulled out his support items notebook and opened it, pointing to a detailed drawing of a visor, what looked like bones from the hand made out of metal, and a weird-looking watch. All of the information on it was coded, so Shinso couldn't read it. Izuku had told him it was the alphabet shifted 2 to the left, put through binary, and then put through a different code he couldn't remember the name of. He was always surprised that Izuku could read it, but it made sense when he had nearly photographic memory. What is it exactly? Shinso always liked hearing him talk about different inventions that he made or came up with and how they worked. The sunglass visor thing is pretty much what it looks like, except a few added details. It should be able to see infrared in the dark, scan someone, and tell you their current state. It should also hopefully connect to my mask, and those too. He pointed to the other 2 drawings. Sounds like a lot. It is, but I should be able to do it. After all, I made these right. He tapped his heel, once making the skateboard appear. He slid slightly before making it disappear. The staff had agreed he could take those home since he made them. They were approved, and they weren't considered a weapon. True, can I help? Shinso asked. It had been a while since him and Izuku worked on something together. Ever since he got into UA, got a job, and met Dobby, they hadn't hung out alone for a while. Of course. Here, I'll show you how to take apart the larger computer. We need its screen, motherboard, the RAM, and any other storage thingies. Izuku handed him a pair of gloves and tools, though Izuku didn't wear any gloves, which explained the small scars he had. How come I have to wear gloves? Shinso asked with a small frown. Izuku rolled his eyes and nudged him. 'Cause I'm a good older brother. Now let's get to work. They had gone through the computer pretty quickly, getting anything of value and useful out before Izuku started tearing the metal apart. They mostly talked about school and things the other had missed or drama. You should have seen it. Mina can be scary when she wants. Izuku chuckled at the story. I think Denki almost passed out, though. He's lucky I caught him, or he would have bashed his head open. Izuku smirked as he pried the casing off of a phone. Speaking of the group, you like any of them? Shinso dropped the tool he was holding and stared at Izuku, who was smiling like an evil cat. You, stop that. Izuku laughed a little. I have no idea what you're talking about, Toshi. I haven't done anything. Shinso glared and picked the tool back up. But you will, the moment you even think I like one of them, you're going to interrogate and threaten them. Izuku gasped. I would do no such thing. I would interrogate and threaten both or all of you. Shinso rolled his eyes and threw a screw at Izuku, who dodged. Oh, right. I have a shift later. Do you want to come with? You can work on school work while I help people. You sure? Won't your boss be angry? Shinso wasn't opposed to the idea. None of them had actually been to where he worked before. Nah, she's really nice. I'm sure she'd love to meet you. Fine, as long as it doesn't get you in trouble. They had finished the casing for the outside of the visor and a few other things for the added pieces when it was time for Izuku to go in. Shinso packed a small bag for his things, so he had something to do while Izuku worked. Midoriya, glad you could make it. Mayumi sent a smile to Shinso. This your little brother, right? I definitely see the resemblance. She joked, pointing to their hair. Very funny. He nudged her as he went to the back and changed into his uniform. He's just coming to work to hang out is all. Nice. Sibling bonding is always good. I'll go ahead and head out then. We've been slow today, only a couple of people, so I wouldn't worry too much. She went to the back and changed into her own clothes before leaving the cafe. Shinso sat at the counter and started finishing the homework he had gotten while Izuku whipped down the tables and helped the few patrons there. Senpai? Izuku turned and saw Jiro and Yamamo walking in and sitting a chair away from Shinso at the counter. Hey, how are you guys doing? I haven't seen you in a while. The two girls have been coming in a little more often ever since he helped them with schoolwork, though more recently they hadn't been around. Sorry about that. I've been trying to train more and Yamamo was helping me. Shinso perked up at the new people a little and looked between the three. Really? What have you been learning? He set tea in front of Yamamo, a soda in front of Jiro, and topped Shinso's coffee off. We don't wish to distract you from customer senpai. It can wait. Izuku looked confused. There wasn't anyone else in the cafe besides them at the moment. He locked eyes with Shinso and laughed a little. This is my little brother Shinso. He's not really a customer. He explained. Both girls looked shocked and looked between the two. You don't really look alike. Jiro pointed out. Shinso smirked a little. He could tell she was fun. Adopted, actually. He stared at Jiro for a minute. You like him, sir, don't you? She crossed her arms. Maybe. What's it to you, purple? Oh, ouch. I'm so offended. Other teen with purple hair. Yamamo looked confused before she spoke up. It's a pleasure to meet you, Shinso. She turned back to Izuku. We mostly train at our homes, but have been looking for somewhere to learn more. You could train where we go. Shinso shrugged his shoulders a little. They're affordable and teach a lot. Izuku's been going there for a while, and after I moved in, I started going there with some friends. Really? What's it called? Jiro asked. About to search the place up, Izuku walked over to the patron that had walked in and got their order. I'll bring that right out. He went to the kitchen area and made the coffee and brought out a cinnamon roll, giving it to the customer before going back to the group at the front. You go to UA? Yamamo asked, a little shocked. Yep, Class 1A. Dude, that's so hard to get into. Nice job. Jiro complimented. Thanks. Are you guys shooting for UA then? Yes. I'm recommended, actually, and Kyoko wishes to go through the normal process. Izuku smiled. Well, I don't know much about the recommended, but I'm sure you'll do amazing either way. And if you want to train at our place, our friends' moms own the place. And what is Dobby exactly? Shinso asked, looking at Izuku. Well, lives with us, and I'm pretty sure Mom adopted him, but I don't really see him as a brother. So like your boyfriend? Jiro asked with a smirk. Izuku blushed and whipped around to her. What? Shinso started laughing and almost fell over if Yamamo hadn't caught him. He isn't my boyfriend, Jiro. You sure? Because we've heard you talk about him a lot. She's got a point, Izuku. Is there something you're not telling me? Izuku glared at both of the purple-haired teens while Yamamo giggled. Both of you stop that. I will poison your drinks. That didn't stop the group from laughing as Izuku rolled his eyes. It was getting later into the night, meaning only Izuku and Shinso were left in the cafe. Shinso scribbled something on his notebook while Izuku finished cleaning the area. When the door opened, though, Shinso looked up with wide eyes, seeing Aizawa standing there. "Oh, hi Aizawa-sensei. Usual right." The teacher nodded as Izuku began preparing his order. "Holy SHD," Shinso whispered, though it was loud enough to get Aizawa's attention. He looked at the other for a moment before speaking. "Shinso Hitoshi right." Shinso nodded, still a little shocked that the hero was there. "How are the Midoriyas treating you?" Aizawa knew that the other wasn't in danger, but he had also learned that Shinso was a huge fan of his. "Yeah, Izuku and Mom are great." Aizawa nodded. "You also plan on becoming an underground hero?" Shinso nodded again. "If you're not working for it, give up." Shinso glared a little. "Of course I'm working for it." He growled a little, though Aizawa only smirked. "Good, you have some potential then." Izuku handed him the coffee and a small bag. "Have a good patrol, Aizawa-sensei." The teacher left the two. Shinso looked to Izuku confused. "He told me if I wasn't working to be an underground hero, then to give up, then said I had some potential when I did work for it." Izuku chuckled and nodded his head. "That's a compliment, Toshi. It means he thinks you can do it." Izuku explained. He had been hanging around Aizawa enough to know when he was complimenting someone, giving advice, or telling them something was wrong. That was a compliment. Shinso asked with a small laugh. "Yeah, he's like that. We should head home, though. Don't want to be out too late." When they did finally get home, Inko had already gone to bed, sending them good-night texts. "Hey, you losers finally got back." Dobby greeted them from the kitchen, drinking tea at the counter. "Shut up, you burnt beach." Shinso threw one of his socks at Dobby, who dodged before throwing his slipper back. "I'm going to head to bed. Your schedule is tiring." Izuku nodded and watched the other leave before getting a glass of water. "Shouldn't you be going to bed?" Dobby asked. He could see the eye bags under Izuku's eyes more prominently now. "Probably in a minute. Not really tired." He shrugged a little, leaning against the counter. "I seriously don't get how. The kid just followed you around, and he looks worn out. He didn't even do any of your school, work, or training." Izuku huffed a little. "Yeah." He set the cup down and smiled at Dobby. "How was work, by the way?" "Pretty normal. Brad is a piece of SHD, though." Izuku laughed, knowing who he was talking about. "But he's not terrible. The others are getting good, but Lightning McQueen could use a little more work, especially with his quirk." He nodded. Hopefully they would be able to help him, so he could be a good hero. "Maybe I should see if I can help. I think I've analyzed his quirk before." He tried to think of what notebook it might have been in. "Here, let's move to the living room at least." Dobby nudged him towards the exit before Izuku went on his own. They sat on the couch and turned the TV on for background noise as Izuku mumbled quietly about what he could remember. Dobby listened silently as he talked. He could understand most of what he was saying at least. "Oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that." He held a hand over his mouth before Dobby moved it. "Don't stop. I was listening." He looked at Izuku's arms and saw the bruising had gone down, but they were still slightly red. "Still can't believe you literally stopped a building from falling on 3 kids." Izuku laughed a little. "Yeah, it was terrifying, honestly." Dobby looked to him a little confused. "If it hadn't worked, they could have gotten really hurt or even died. I knew what I was preparing for when I got old enough to understand what being a hero meant. But it was still scary, you know." "Not really. I've only had to protect my siblings and Mom, but I kinda do." Izuku smiled and hugged the other. "Thank you for listening to me." Dobby wrapped his arms around the other's waist. "Course, gotta repay you somehow." Izuku pushed away a little, but kept his hands on his shoulders. "Dobby, you really don't." Dobby rolled his eyes with a smirk. "I will anyway." Shinso woke up and blinked a few times trying to get his bearings as he sat up. Normally, he would take a minute and just stare at the ceiling, but the group had wanted to go hang out today, before school started Monday. He rubbed his eyes a little before grabbing his phone. He flinched back at the brightness before looking at the time. It was around 11 a.m., so it was still a little early for him. They had wanted to meet at his place since Katsuki lived nearby, and they had a somewhat big house, even though the Bakugas was way bigger. Standing up, he grabbed new clothes and his phone before going into the bathroom and starting a shower with music playing from his phone. After a while, he got out and changed before going downstairs. He had figured Izuku was already up since the other liked to wake up early and do workouts. Though he wasn't sure about Dobby, he hadn't seen the other up unless Izuku woke him up or if he hadn't slept like Shinso sometimes. He walked into the kitchen and started the coffee machine before walking out into the living room. He was expecting maybe Izuku to be there if he had just gotten back, but he wasn't expecting this. On the couch was Izuku and Dobby, both still asleep. Dobby had his back against the couch with an arm thrown over Izuku's waist and the other being used as a pillow for the two, while Izuku had his arms curled up in front of him and his head ducked under Dobby's chin. He tried not to laugh as he took a few pictures before walking over to the front of the couch and poked Izuku in the back. "Izuku, get up," he whispered. He didn't want to wake up Dobby because it would be so much funnier if it was Izuku. The other groaned but didn't make a move. Izuku. He kicked the other this time, making him jump. Ow! What was Dash? He cut himself off when he saw where he was. He blushed before falling off the couch. Shinso broke down laughing at that, as Dobby shifted a little before sitting up with a glare. "What the hell?" Izuku stood up and waved his hands a little. And nothing. Shinso kept laughing and fell on the ground, tried to catch his breath. Toshi. Shinso laughed louder as Izuku tried to wrestle the phone from him. Finally catching his breath, he stood up and smiled at Izuku's glare. "Nope. These are mine now, blackmail purposes." Izuku growled a little before chasing after Shinso throughout the living room as Dobby rubbed at his eyes. "Jesus." Dobby stood up and ignored the two running around, going straight to the coffee and pouring himself a cup, adding sugar and creamer to it. "You can't run forever. I know where you live." "We live together, dumbass." The two kept fighting as the front door opened and Katsuki walked in. He took one look at the siblings before joining Dobby in the kitchen and getting water. "The F they doing, you overgrown racket?" Katsuki asked as he watched the two fight, though it was obvious neither were really trying. "I have no F clue." "Sparky boom boom man," Katsuki growled but went back to watching them. When it came to Dobby, Shinso, and Katsuki, they all came up with nicknames for each other, though it was usually insults more than anything. "Wait, why the hell are you here?" Katsuki pointed to Shinso before making a few hand gestures. Dobby recognized it as the symbols for the other brats. Izuku had been teaching him sign, since almost all of them knew it, though the Bakugas and the Midoriyas were all fluent in it. "Why not just at the gym?" "I don't effing know, man. The extras just said it sounded fun." Dobby hummed a little before smirking. "It has nothing to do with someone at all, right?" Bakuga blushed and kicked Dobby with a growl. "Shut the F up." Dobby only kicked him back as the two finally stopped fighting on the floor. "Fine, you win. What do you want?" Shinso cackled evilly before smirking. "I don't know. I think I'll hold on to this for something good." Izuku glared and thought about tackling him again, but decided against it at the last second. "You're the worst. I know it keeps me up at night." Shinso brushed himself off and turned to the other two. "Oh, look who's early, Lava Girl." Katsuki glared at him. "Shut it, brain freak." The two glared at each other before Shinso got coffee and sat next to him in silence. "Kakin, what did you get here?" Izuku asked. He grabbed an energy drink rather than anything else. He had found a new liking for the drinks. "When you and Purple F were fighting, the hell was that about, Deku?" Izuku blushed again and almost choked. "Nothing." Shinso smirked and showed the picture to Katsuki, who immediately started laughing hysterically. "Can I see?" Dobby asked, feeling a little left out of the joke. "Nope, it's nothing. What are you doing here, Kakin?" Izuku quickly changed the subject, though he could tell Dobby wouldn't let it go anytime soon. The losers wanted to hang out and decided this was the effing place to do it. "Really? I figured they would go with your place. It's bigger." He shrugged his shoulders a little as Katsuki rolled his eyes. "You think they have AF thought process? It's probably because they've never been to this shitty place." Izuku knew he wasn't actually calling the house shitty, since it was just how he talked. I never thought about that. They really have never been here." He remembered when Katsuki and him would have sleepovers at each other's places. Then Shinso got added to the mix. The group had all stayed over at Katsuki's a couple of times, and even once at Kurishima's, but never here. "Do you want us to get stuff?" "We need groceries anyway," Izuku suggested, Plus, he knew if they did go, he would likely leave Katsuki and Shinso here since they weren't exactly one for crowds. Shinso got bad anxiety in them, and Katsuki sometimes got overwhelmed since it was hard to focus on hearing people correctly. You sure? I don't want to make you go there by yourself. Though Izuku tended to be better with the crowds, if he was by himself, he would panic a little since no one was there to trump his own anxiety. I'll come with, got nothing better to do. Dobby shrugged his shoulders a little. That was when Izuku realized something. Oh my God, did we ever get you clothes? Izuku asked a little shocked. He remembered when they had washed the clothes he was wearing, and he had changed into borrowed old ones from his father, but otherwise he hadn't remembered ever getting the other clothes. Oh, SHD. Katsuki and Shinso started laughing at the duo as they had realized they never got him other clothes. You'll go ahead and get groceries and your clothes then. Izuku laughed a little as he went upstairs to change. Dobby watched him leave before looking at the two younger teens. Tell me why you were laughing. Izuku was looking at the clothing stores near them as they walked. He knew of a few, but he didn't really know Dobby's style or aesthetic. Izuku always went for more soft boy, as Mina called it, or should be illegal by Kaminari, who was then punched by both Katsuki and Shinso. What clothes do you like? Dobby seemed to snap out of a dream. What? Izuku laughed a little. What do you like to wear? Dobby got a weird look on his face. Clothes. Izuku stared at him for a moment before breaking down in laughter as Dobby blushed. Well, I don't know. It took a moment for Izuku to calm down, but once he did, he showed him some pictures of the clothing stores. Well, you seem to like black, and blue would look good on you. Maybe some dark reds. Izuku listed off a few more things as Dobby just scrolled through the pictures. Sounds fine to me. Maybe more blacks, though. Izuku nodded as they made it to the first store. Let's get you sweatpants for sure. They're really comfortable. And some hoodies, too. Izuku was making a small list in his head as they looked around the store. Every now and again, Dobby would take the clothes and try them on. So far, he had only kept the sweats they grabbed, cargo pants, a few baggy shirts, and a few jackets and hoodies. Izuku had noticed the pattern of not getting anything form-fitting or tight. Dobby, how come you mostly like the baggier clothes? Dobby paused and looked at him. You don't have to answer. I know it could be a personal thing, and I didn't mean to pry dash. Dobby smiled and little. It's fine. It's just more comfortable, doesn't irritate the burns. Izuku paused and stared at the other. Half the time when they were talking or hanging out, Izuku didn't really notice them. Of course, he knew they were there, but he often forgot about them. I didn't even think about that. Dobby jumped a little at the loud volume before Izuku quieted down. Do you want to look for something that would cool them down or relieve some of the pain? Do they hurt a lot? Is that jacket comfortable then? Should we get more sweats then? Does dash. Dobby cut him off with a laugh. Izuku, it's fine. This is already more than enough. Izuku frowned a little. Well, we'll get more clothes still. Let's head to the grocery store. They finally made it back to the house, and Izuku saw that Inko had made it home earlier and the others were already here. Senpai, Shiro called as he ran out to help them with the bags. We should have been here before. Your mom is so nice. Izuku laughed a little. Yeah, she's the best. Shiro stared at Dobby for a second, getting a confused look from Dobby. Can I help you? So you do live with them? Yes. The three walked up to the house as Dobby looked to Izuku for an answer, who only shrugged a little, at least until they made it inside, and Shiro shouted, Denki, you owe me 2,000 yen. DM in it. Izuku set the bags down while Dobby just looked at the sea of children. Why couldn't you just be a homeless raccoon that hangs around for food? Izuku almost fell on the floor laughing. Why is everyone calling me a raccoon today? Inko came out of the kitchen, chuckling a little before patting his face. It's all right, Dobby. You are a handsome raccoon. It's nice to have you around. Thanks. He set the bags down and sat on the couch, almost collapsing onto it. Jesus, I hated that. There was so much. What's he talking about? Mina asked as Izuku moved Dobby's legs and sat down before putting them on his lap. We got him clothes when we got groceries. He is not that fashionably inclined. Mina laughed a little before going back to the game they were all playing. It looked like a card game. No, Kiri would make a great STRPR. Both Izuku and Dobby jolted up and stared at the group. Really? I think he would make good security. I think Danks falls into the SDRPR role well. Izuku burst out laughing while Dobby looked mildly concerned about the conversation. Dobby, can you follow me to the kitchen? Inko asked, tapping the boy on the shoulder. He nodded hesitantly before following her to the kitchen. Is everything all right? I told Izuku the clothes were too much already. We can dash. Inko shook her head. It's not about that, sweetheart. I just wanted to prepare you. Dobby's eyes widened a little in panic before she reassured him. It's nothing bad. I was able to get into contact with an old friend of mine. He's a detective, and he wants to take on your case. He paused and brought a hand to his mouth. So I may get to see them again, right? He didn't want to get his hopes up, but he had missed his siblings and mom. Yes, he'll be working with another hero, a good one, and they'll do everything in their power to get your mother out and your siblings safe, especially your younger brother. He's still at the house, but we're hoping to change that soon. Dobby stood there in shock before pulling her into a hug. Thank you so much. She patted his back before pulling away. Of course. Oh, honey, you're bleeding. He felt his face and felt BLD coming from his eyes. Sorry. She handed him some paper towel. Sometimes when I cry, it bleeds instead. Tear ducts got a little up. She patted his shoulder. It's all right. Once we get this officially started, I'm taking you to the hospital. We'll see what we can do about these burns, okay? Some of it will always be there, but I'm sure we can help a little. Jesus, you people are too nice. Inko only smiled and let him back out where the group were still playing, with Izuku joining in about a weird conversation. Okay, but no, if you look at it, that doesn't make sense. Dobby fell onto the couch next to Izuku, who turned to him. Everything okay? Dobby let out a huff and smiled. Yeah, everything's perfect. Izuku smiled and rubbed his arm before going back to the argument. Dobby watched them, still smiling. He hoped his siblings would get to meet these people and help them like they helped him. Izuku bounced on the ball of his feet nervously as he messed with his hands, cracking them every now and again. He had already gone through his plan in his head. He was the only student in Class 1A, and that was bound to draw attention for sure. He also knew that when Present Mike was announcing him as the class, he would also mention that he was quirkless. He had asked him to say it after all. Kid, Izuku turned to Aizawa with a smile. Since you're the only student in 1A, we normally don't specify quirks in the intros. Do you want Mike to say you're quirkless? Izuku thought about it for a minute. He had originally planned on laying low, but if he was being announced separately, it would be difficult. Sure. Aizawa seemed a little surprised at the answer. Normally, when people hear I'm quirkless, they assume weak, dumb, slow, stuff like that. If they underestimate me, then they'll lose faster. Aizawa smiled and ruffled his hair. Smart. Good luck, kid. If you lose, we're doubling down on your training. Izuku nodded and started stretching. He had been waiting to be announced. He was mostly anxious about everyone staring at him. He had gotten used to talking and being around strangers thanks to the gym, kids, and his job, but other things still made him nervous, such as really big crowds. And now, Class 1A, that only has one student. At that, he walked out with a small smile, trying to keep the small bounce in his step. Midoriya, Izuku, UA's quirkless wonder. Izuku faltered a little. He was not expecting that last part. He could practically hear his own heartbeat as the stadium got quiet, until Present Mike began talking again. He could hear people whispering still, though. There's only him. But he's quirkless. He'll probably lose. I hope he doesn't get hurt. He ignored them as he watched the other students walk out, clapping and cheering when he saw Suzuki. Once everyone was announced and told to meet in the middle, they immediately joined up. She glared at anyone that gave them funny looks, while Izuku looked at anyone's quirk and tried to analyze them as soon as possible. We're going to jump right into the festival. Be prepared, everyone. Midnight yelled as the screen lit up with the first round laser dodgeball. The large group of students were shown to a large arena-like room. The entire room was dark, but they could see large, small, and wide boxes everywhere. There were random walls with holes through them that you could see through and likely fit your arm through. In this room, you'll see obstacles that you can use to your liking. Suddenly, lasers of different colors turned on, some moving, some appearing and disappearing, and others staying still. You'll all get one dodgeball. When the time starts, you'll have 30 minutes to collect points from other people. Each person you get out is worth 10 points. If you catch a ball, neither person is out. By the end, you need to be holding a ball, or you're eliminated. Good luck, everyone. They were all given a ball that was roughly the size of Izuku's hand. They had a moment before the timer started, and Izuku could feel eyes on him. He tried not to focus on them as he watched the lasers. There was a pattern to all of them. All of the blue and purple ones stayed still, the green ones appeared and disappeared, and the red ones moved. It looked like the green ones were set to a specific timer, which made sense for a program if no one was controlling them. But he was worried about the purple ones. It didn't make sense to have two stationary lasers. He also noted that since the red ones moved while the blue stayed, still it might be a hint. I'm going after him first. Yeah, easy points, right? He smirked little. His plan was working after all. Begin. Izuku scanned the area before sprinting to one of the walls. He jumped over it. He threw his ball in mid-air and took the person hiding out. He rolled and picked his ball back up while taking the persons as they walked out of the area with the help of a teacher. He ducked behind the wall and looked through the holes. He could see people still having trouble even getting around the lasers. He watched as someone got close to the purple ones. As soon as they were within a few inches, it moved towards them and hit them, getting them out. So his theory had been right. He looked around the edge of the wall and saw someone looking around. Taking his chance, he leapt over the wall before twisting and hitting them with one of the dodgeball. They groaned as they tossed their ball to him. He caught it and went back behind the wall, putting it with his other one. He knew some of the people were still gunning for him, especially if they saw the two he took down. So far, it looked like a little over half the students had been taken out already. He assumed that if he took someone down, he wouldn't gain their collected points, just the original 10, and if the two he took down had high points, then it would dwindle them down. He grabbed his extras before jumping over the wall. He saw two people out in the open and quickly hit them before flipping over some of the lasers and landing on a platform. He ducked under a ball before jumping down. He rolled under one of the red lasers before ducking behind another wall. 10 minutes left. Izuku's eyes widened a little. He hadn't expected it to get so close. Taking a deep breath in, he jumped over the wall and dodged the lasers. He was hoping someone would try to hit him. When a ball came at him, he smirked as he jumped and twisted in the air. He kicked at it, making it fly back to the sender and get them out. An amazing move, since he technically caught it, and sent it he's still in. He smiled as he landed before having to jump again when a purple laser came his way. When he landed, he didn't get long before he jumped back, landing on his hands and pushing off again. His feet landed on one of the walls, and he pushed off before rolling and landing behind a platform. He turned and caught a ball. He looked at it before spinning a little and throwing it right back at the other, getting them out. Time's up. Izuku was glad to see that Suzuki made it. He waved over to her before they met up where the other students were. Hey, Mito, what did you get? Yomai thinks 60. Suzuki looked at him with shock. What? Midoriya, I barely got 20. Izuku looked at her with wide eyes. Oh, yo, Jesus, man. If I had known you were such a badass, I would have teamed with you. Izuku laughed a little and rubbed the back of his neck. Sorry. She rolled her eyes and elbowed him a little. Good job, everyone. For the points, it looks like first is Izuku Midoriya with 60 points. He felt the eyes on him again, and people began to whisper, the next round you'll get into pairs and teams. Go ahead and do that. Suzuki and Izuku didn't even move, knowing that since they were paired, no one would want to be paired with him. Good. Your points will carry over and be added with your teammates. The screen lit up again, and Izuku felt like cheering Paintball. They were given the choice between 3 guns, a Glock, a sniper rifle, and an automatic. Each team needed at least one of them. Suzuki went with the automatic since she didn't really know how to use or aim the others well. Izuku automatically grabbed the Glock before also grabbing the rifle. He had been working on using a rifle to add pieces to his gun so he could have a distance advantage. Where should we go? Suzuki asked as they looked around. The area was just a large forest with a lot of trees and what looked like a cliff edge. Follow me. He had trained in areas like these with his capture weapon and his guns. They ran deep into the forest and climbed into some of the trees. Sitting in the branches, we'll want to stay up in the air and out of sight as much as possible. The moment anyone sees us, we're screwed. He made sure both of his guns were loaded before he scanned the area. All the teams had different colors. They had gone with a light blue, so no one would think it was them who was taking people down. If you hit someone, then a teacher would get them and bring them back to the arena. The colors were so they knew which team took them down, and so they could add up points easier. Mito, I'm so glad we are friends. Izuku laughed a little. He scanned the area again and saw a team of 4. Suzuki, he whispered, pointing to them. They could at least get 2 if she was bad at aiming, but it would still be half their team. As quietly as possible, Izuku aimed the Glock at the obvious leader, while Suzuki aimed at the one behind them. They waited a few seconds before Izuku fired. Hitting the leader, he heard Suzuki fire and saw it hit the other teen as he quickly aimed at another and hit them. He had expected the 4th person to run, but they only seemed to panic, letting Suzuki get another shot in. Hell yeah! She cheered quietly as Izuku tried to think of how many points they now had. They moved throughout the trees as quietly as they could, with Suzuki using her snakes to swing through them, while Izuku would jump and use the branches to move. They had been racking up points as they went, taking out team after team. When they weren't shooting, Izuku was showing Suzuki how to aim properly, or how to use the sniper rifle. Ammo drop. Izuku looked up as a drone flew overhead and dropped a crate of paintball ammo. Should we stop? Suzuki asked since they were close by. Izuku smiled as they jumped down and grabbed their own ammo. Before they left, though, Izuku looked at the crate and smirked. How much do you think we could carry? The group cheered as they saw Izuku kick the dodgeball back to its sender. Inko simply clapped with the crowd as the kids all shook each other. That's how you deal with Adventurous. Bakuga shouted as he jumped up and high-fived Shinso. Senpai's the best. So manly. Whoa. Dobby laughed at the excited teens screaming. Jesus, you'll get hyped, don't you? He asked teasingly as Shinso glared at him. Shut up. Zero smirked and leaned over to Dobby. At least we don't drool when he's working out. The others laughed while Dobby shoved Zero off the couch. They can't even see him. That's so cool. Kaminari shouted as they saw another team get taken out by a light blue paintball. He's got to teach me that sometime. They watched as the camera got a small glimpse of Izuku swinging between the branches. When they heard the ammo announcement, they were a little shocked to see Izuku and his teammate taking all of the ammo they could carry. What are they doing? Kirishima asked, a little confused, while Inko smiled proudly. My baby's being smart. The group looked to her, some getting it while the others were still confused. If they take all the ammo, how can they lose? Dobby smiled a little proudly as they left the area, leaving the teams nothing. Izuku helped Suzuki back into the trees as they hid the ammo in the hollow parts and the leaves. Okay, when they come this way, we just fire. Don't worry about anything other than getting the others out. I'm going to be over there, so it's harder for them to know where we are exactly. We got this. Izuku smiled and nodded as he moved over to the other side of the clearing. They waited silently as some people came into the area. The groups seemed to form a sort of truce to get ammo, but when there wasn't any ammo, they aimed at each other, yelling. This was a good thing. It would save them the extra ammo to take them down. What they weren't expecting was another team to appear and take out both teams before they could even react. This is getting laughably easy. The leader spoke as he walked past the annoyed students. It's a little sad. Surprised the Quirkless Beach isn't out yet. Izuku glared a little at the name as he aimed for that person, and if he shot where it would hurt more than normal, no one would know. Shut up. We all saw him in that first round. I'd be careful, isn't that right? The leader looked straight to where Izuku was. He didn't move, only shifting his eyesight a little. You know you can come out now. We already know both of you are here. Suzuki looked to him for a moment before Izuku nodded, and they both fell to the ground. Guns still trained on the team, though none of them seemed bothered by it. What's this all about? Suzuki was the one to speak up while Izuku studied them, trying to figure out what their quirks were. Well, seeing as I'm the team's leader, I just wanted to chat with the reigning champions so far. Izuku shifted back a little. Something seemed off about the other, at least until we take you out. What makes you so confident? Izuku asked, giving a small signal for Suzuki to back up slowly and into the trees while he had the team's focus. Why shouldn't I be? Izuku noticed he was talking about himself, not the team, so he didn't plan on keeping them around long. He pointed to the person next to the leader, have advanced senses. It's how you knew we were in the trees in the first place. He pointed to the girl in the back, have a quirk that allows you to see trajectory lines. Saw you use it during Dodgeball. He looked to the one who called him a beach, have a mutation quirk that makes you look like a mouse. I assume it also lets you use your tail at free will and claws. The three seemed shocked he figured it out. Really? And what about me? Izuku smirked. I have a few theories. It was silent for a moment until Izuku and Suzuki opened fire on the other three group members. They all seemed shocked to be hit. Izuku turned and fired once at the leader only for it to bounce off and force him to dodge. That was one of them. The leader smirked as the group members got up covered in paint. But you said you'd protect us. I said if you weren't dead weight, but with these two you'll only be in the way. The three were led away from clearing as Izuku kept his gun trained on the leader. Not sure why you're still aiming. You know it won't work. Izuku smiled a little. Maybe, but second time's the charm. The two stared each other down as Suzuki looked nervously between them. And Mito, he looked at her for a moment. I can't do this. You're on your own. She turned and ran from him into the woods. Izuku watched her in shock before looking back at the leader. While that was a little sad, she was interesting for the moment at least. He turned back to Izuku with a smirk. Do you want to run too, or listen? What do you want? Izuku gritted out. Simple, a team up. Izuku laughed bitterly and looked at the paint on the ground. And that worked out so well last time. The leader tooted at him with a shake of his head. Except they were bad, annoying, dead weight you. On the other hand, have experience. You know your way around here in guns. Why would I abandon that? And you have all the ammo. I'll have to decline, not interested in getting shot later. The other sighed and drew his gun. Well, I was hoping to avoid this, but you're too stubborn anyway. He began firing at Izuku, who ran in zigzags to dodge the pellets. He ran up to the other and kicked at the shield. It wasn't enough force to break it, but made him stumble back and lose his balance. You aren't the first to tell me that. He stood in a fighting position with a large smile on his face. He took out his Glock and began firing at the shield. Even if it bounced off, certain ones broke on impact, solidifying more of his theory. He jumped back as the other got up and began firing back at him. Running to the trees, Izuku twisted and landed on it before twisting and tackling the other, making him land in the dirt, the shield blocking Izuku from getting too close. He rolled off to the side, dodging the spray of bullets aimed at him. You're annoying too. Izuku smirked as he climbed into a tree before stomping down onto the shield. I get that one a lot too. He tried to shoot at Izuku's feet, but missed as he jumped back into the trees. When he landed on the ground, he moved from side to side, kicking up dirt and dust from the cracked ground. The other glared at him, trying to hit him, but only helping in kicking up more dirt. You and that girl are losers. What makes you think you can win? Huh. Maybe be like her and run. Izuku dodged a fist and grabbed it before the shield returned and pushed him back. A little rude, don't you think? What happened to sportsmanship? As he yelled, he punched the ground with enough force to expand the dust cloud, making it hard to see in front of him. Went down the drain, just like you will. He aimed the gun at Izuku's head, who was crouched in front of him like he was ready to attack his legs. He smirked at Izuku and cocked the gun, ready to let off the round, so any last words before you lose? Izuku kept his eyes on the ground before laughing. He looked up with a wide smile and cocked his head to the side like a question. Who said anything about losing? Just as he said that a gunshot went off. The leader jerked forward and turned in shock to Suzuki, who had a gun aimed at his back. Surprise beach. The leader growled and aimed at Suzuki, ready to fire, only for his arm to be caught by Izuku and slammed back into the ground. Izuku crouched down and spoke quietly to the leader. You give yourself away. He patted his face with an evil look. Work on that. Izuku stood up and high-fived Suzuki with cheer. Time's up. Thank you for joining us on this journey through What If Deku Was Class 1A Senior. We hope you found it as captivating as we did. A big thank you to Jace is Dead for creating such an engaging story. Don't forget to visit their profile on archiveofourown.org for more fantastic works. The link is in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Zenin Fanfics for more intriguing explorations into fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we love hearing your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section. See you soon in the next video.